Honest answer is yes. All set? Mike? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town Council meeting of December 2nd, Bristol Town Council meeting of December 2nd. We have a special treat here tonight. And on a side note, we have so many things to be lucky for and thankful for. One of them is Troop 2 here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and this is just a small piece of what makes Bristol a wonderful place. And I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to change that and say this is the big reason what makes Bristol a wonderful place. So Troop 2, could you come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everybody could just stay standing for one moment. Some of you or all of you may know about the shooting in California and 14 passed away. If we could just have a moment of silence for them. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Troop 2.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Thank you very much. Come back soon.
I see a lot of potential Eagle Scouts walking past us, so keep up the good work. Before we go into our regular meeting, Chief Martin and I spoke recently at the fire station headquarters, and we were talking about a couple of things. First, the gentleman that's standing behind the chief, which I'm going to let the chief introduce in a moment, but some of you may already know him. The other thing that we were talking about is holiday safety and just kind of the reminding everybody about the 101 about fire safety, and the chief thought it was an appropriate time now to talk about the issues that can happen around the holidays and how to avoid them. So, Chief, off to you, sir.
Chair, thank you very much. As you know, we're breaking ground. We have a new fire marshal in town. Standing to my left, Mike DeMello. He's a career firefighter who's recently retired, and we grabbed him as the fire marshal. Doing an excellent job. He's been on the job about a month now. So as we go through this, Mike is totally qualified. One of the things that happened over the last month is that all of us in the office are now what they call fit, trained, and certified. We just got that thing this week. It's fire investigator technicians. So that's one of our quals that we just did. But Mike's going to talk to us a little bit about smoke detectors quickly, and I'm on a timer. And then following that, I'm going to come back and talk about some Christmas safety, okay?
Thank
Mike?
you.
Thank you, Chief.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. Evening, everybody. We just wanted to use this as a quick time to remind you and the public, if they haven't checked their smoke detector batteries or smoke alarm batteries, this is a good time to do that. Usually we put out this announcement in October, but since the holiday season is upon us, it's a good time to have that reminder as well. We also like to invite the public, if they have any questions, if they have smoke detectors, they don't know how to place them, to give us a call at any time at the office, and we'll be happy to come out, take a look at your property, tell you the correct placement of it, or advise you is the best way to handle it at any point.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks. Anyhow, for Christmas safety, we all love a beautiful Christmas tree. Let's take care this year. Make sure they're watered daily. No open flames near them. As you go and you start to decorate your tree, let's look at the lights. Make sure we don't have any frayed lights or candle lights, and ensure the safety of your home. Okay, keep it well watered and everything. No open flames near anything, and everything will go well for another happy holiday season. And lastly, as I get done here, one of the things that we're going to do, and we're going to distribute them around town to the elderly housings, the senior housings, is we're developing a little cheat sheet for us. We hope that everyone would grab one, fill it out. This is a medical record thing. Fill it out, put it on your kitchen table, put it on your refrigerator, and we would be able to, as we walk in, and one of the first things we do is anytime we have a call for rescue, we say, what kind of medications are you taking? We can point at the refrigerator and be several steps ahead of the game to make sure. Okay? And I'd like to thank you again for hearing us, and everybody have a very Merry Christmas as we go forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
That was absolutely spectacular, Chief. Just about even to your response time. Very fast. So, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, the first item on this evening's agenda is the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to request holding out AA1 and AA2 regarding the Maritime Center in case not all the issues in that are brought out in other testimony.
Is there anything else that any other councilor would like to hold out?
I'd also like to suggest we combine I-9 with C4 and C5. I think those are all the same subject.
I-9 is the the draft resolution for the mooring and docking fees.
Let me see if I'm right about that then. Yeah, so I think those are actually the same subjects.
So give that to us again, Halsey. I-9 and...
Together with C4. And I guess also C5. It looks like I-9 is a clean version of the other recommendations.
Mr. Court?
There's essentially, there are two, I guess there's sort of a choice of ordinances. One would be to amend the ordinance at the traditional way, which would be basically to make new prices, and they would end up in Chapter 11 of the Town Code. The second version is a little bit of a sort of an expedited version overall, in that it would remove them from Chapter 11 and place them into a document which the council can adopt at will.
Well, that's the reason I wanted to combine them, because I don't think there's any point in us passing one decision at the beginning of the meeting that we alter in the later part of the meeting.
Right.
Well, Halsey, how about this? How about if when we get to C4, which would be our first item that you want to combine, how about if we take a look at it at that point, and if it's appropriate to combine them all, and I do agree, that's actually part of the dialogue. Would that be okay with you?
That'd be fine, sure.
Yes. And I will remind the council, too, that we are talking about ordinances and we're at first reading, so the final adoption of that item that appears in Article 9 wouldn't really be in place until the second reading.
But we can direct the flow of it from this
Absolutely.
point. Yep.
So we have a motion to combine AA1, or excuse me, pull out AA1 and AA2 from the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the submission of minutes of previous meetings, items A, 1, 2, and 3.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
Seconded?
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is a public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider Ordinance 2015-14, and this is an amendment to the zoning code for an amendment to Section 28, definitions regarding land development projects, resource conservation and creative development overlay regarding the process of improving conservation development subdivisions. This is the public hearing, and the council is considering this at this point as for the second reading for adoption. There is a recommendation provided by the planning board, and this is an advertised public hearing.
So before we open that public hearing, Diane, could you just kind of refresh everyone of what the goal of this ordinance change was, and then we'll open it up?
Sure. So the goal of this change was to identify a process for reviewing conservation subdivisions. The planning board, the zoning, required that all conservation subdivisions, whether they be large or small, simple or complicated, be major subdivisions, which would require a three-step process and a more timely, time review. So the ordinance change would allow the categorization of these different applications. So smaller applications wouldn't need, 3 reviews, they would just need 2, and so forth. So it was a way to categorize the scope of different, or the scale of different applications, and establish a process for them.
Are we correct to assume from that this would be changed to speed up things rather than to slow them down?
Yes.
Streamline.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you for that synopsis. So we're going to open up the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak against? Is there anyone to speak against? Yes, I am repeating myself. Is there anyone to speak against? Have a motion to close the public hearing?
Close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. What's the council's pleasure?
Make a motion that we adopt the second reading for this Creation, Development, Compensation Overlay Ordinance, Chapter 28, Zoning, Article 1.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second, and just a side note real quick, we all appreciate the efforts that you put on this, and this is great to streamline things, and we talk about making it easier to go through the process. Obviously, the steps are still there to make sure things are done correctly. It just helps speed it along. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next public hearing, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is to consider ordinance number 2015-15 as amended. This is to include certain special use permit standards for, in particular, the issues relating to medical marijuana uses. This is the second reading for adoption. You have a recommendation provided by the Planning Board and also a late item comments from the ACLU Director, Stephen Brown.
So this is the second reading. I know that we've spent some time on this, so we're going to open this up to the public first. So is there anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak against? Please. If you could just get in line, if you don't mind. Please.
My name's William Cotton. I'm the chairperson for Rhode Island Patient Association.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think this would be very detrimental to patients, especially ones that live in public housing. I have multiple sclerosis. I'm on fixed income myself, and these grows help out patients to get medicine at a reasonable cost. These compassion centers costs are astronomical. I mean, $17 a gram, $15 a gram to these patients, where these caregivers are basically giving it at cost to these patients. So to take these rights or to limit grows to only 12 plants would be wrong. I mean, it would hurt patients totally. I don't see patients going to these compassion centers and getting discounts like they were supposed to. When they were assigned to be compassion centers, they were supposed to help out patients at a reasonable cost. I'm getting phone calls that they're getting medicine at $250 a half ounce, where most of the caregivers don't even go over $200 on an ounce. So you're asking patients to pay double the cost. Thank you.
Might I ask you a question about
you.
that?
Yes.
It seems to me one of the issues in this whole matter is the amount of marijuana that's required to alleviate pain and suffering.
Correct.
And I've heard it alleged that the favorable consequence of it doesn't last very long, and that you have to keep repeating it every couple of hours.
That depends on the the condition. With me, with multiple sclerosis, I medicate about eight times a day. But
Eight times a day, every 3 hours or a
Maybe
little
3
more?
to 4 hours, but that's a couple of tokes. But I'm in control of myself. I'm not taking Oxycontin. I'm not taking Vicodin, where I would be subject to probably staying in my house and staying in bed. I'm actually able to function normally.
Well, when you have the favorable effect of it, does that last 1 hour, 2 hours? How long?
Can last up to 6 hours. It depends on my multiple sclerosis in the day that I'm having. I mean, my multiple sclerosis can act up differently on different days. I could have tremors one day or muscle pain and fatigue the next. I take different types of cannabis to help those different variations of symptoms.
So you have more than one affliction that you're dealing with?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now, based on all of that, your own particular needs, as an example of the general issue, how many plants should you be able to grow?
Well, each plant is different, and people grow differently.
No, but I'm asking you as an example.
How many plants do I grow?
How many would you grow, or maybe you do already? Do you grow them now?
8. 8 plants helps me out, and helps what I do. And
well, then why do you want us to say more than 12 then?
But I'm talking as a caregiver. If you're a patient and you're also a caregiver, you're allowed 24 plants in that house. And if you're taking care of 5 patients, you're going to need those extra plants.
Well, most of these regulations don't relate to large groups of people. They relate to mostly 1 or 2 people.
Well, each caregiver is allowed to help up to 5 patients.
Well, maybe that's something that needs to be clarified.
I mean, if a caregiver is taking care of 5 patients, how is it they're supposed to take care of 5 patients on...
Well, Mr. Chairman, could I ask the solicitor to comment on that?
I'm more than happy to. So, as you probably know from reading the ordinance, that anyone can grow up to 12 plants. There's no regulation whatsoever. You're totally free to do that. That's what state law provides for, and you can certainly do so. And then between 12 and 24 plants, there is a little process that you go through, but you don't have to go to the zoning board. It doesn't have to be a public situation. When you get into the situation you're talking about, the cooperatives or the collaboratives where you have 24 or more plants, like for instance, your example, a caregiver under state law can provide for up to 5 individual users, as long as they're registered with that caregiver. And if that person wants to grow, 60 plants, for instance, meaning the 12 per person or however many that person wants, that would require zoning board approval. And, that's just part of the balancing test with the ability of the local cities and towns, the town of Bristol in particular here, to regulate what goes on within its borders with regard to zoning uses, and where it's not being, and this is very important, it's not being prohibited at all. It's just a regulatory process. So if you want to grow multiple plants beyond the 24, then you go through this regulatory process. But it's no different than anyone else who's required to go to the zoning board for whatever use they may want to take care of.
Well, I find that, like with the Slater Center, there's also prejudice towards this whole program. I don't know if you know this, but the inspector that went to the Compassion Center to go check out if everything was okay was totally against this program, was taped outside stating how much he didn't like the program.
Well, the problem with, and certainly I want to hear the rest of this, but the problem with that is that we can't compare what we are here. Correct. And it's different people. That's obviously, as you mentioned earlier, is that your situation is different than someone else's, which is a absolutely fair statement. Ours is a different situation, too, in the sense of ours is not the same inspector. Ours is not any of that. So I think that we, I take that back and I say I know that we have a good inspection system here. We have good inspectors here, and we have thoughtful and respectful people, too.
Okay. So. What I was trying to say is also, a caregiver and a patient is only allowed to grow up to 24 plants in the house any which way. Right. In the industrial area, they're only allowed to grow up to 48 plants altogether. And there's already a process for that to happen. So why put more process on a patient's back? I mean, yeah.
I just have a question, if I can, and that is, I think that workshop that we had was very informative. Certainly it was for me in terms of issues that I had not thought about, particularly about the privacy aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I think the ordinance has changed somewhat. I'm still not completely satisfied with it in terms of the privacy. So that's where I would disagree with our solicitor to some degree, where this is the same as every other regulatory process we do. It's not, because this is not going to cost somebody their job, perhaps, or whatever the case may be, if people do come out and have to come forward, because there's only one left, and that's the residential cooperative cultivation, where you have to go a special use. And then you do have to come out and say that you're growing. You do put yourselves in danger, and you do potentially have the ability, no matter how compassionate and how nice and how everything else our staff are, it's really no one's business. And so I do have some issues with that. But what I wanted to ask you specifically is, I think when we first started this, and I'd have to go back, I have several versions, it was in more categories, the special use, than this particular one. So we're only talking about one, and I wish the ACLU had sent their letter earlier, because I would like to read through it, but I'm just trying to glance at it as quickly as I can. Can you speak specifically to just the residential co-op cultivation area, which is right now the only one that needs to have, if I'm correct, a special use, and other than that, there shouldn't have to be? Are there other ones where people have to go out and move forward? Like, what is the little footnote 8 mean on the personal marijuana cultivation? Like,
Yeah, I'm looking now. Is that footnote in the table?
it's in the table, yes.
Your mic, please.
So the one I'm looking at, Mary, doesn't have a footnote.
Well, it has like a little 8 right besides, like, yes, with a little 8.
Which page?
Oh, I see,
On the
okay.
The table, the use table. Oh, the little 8 there.
Okay, so that's a reference, Mary, to section 28-158, which I will go to.
It is, like, yes, I think this is the one, like the residential, and you have to go to the TRC. Here's that the...
Right, you will have to go to the Technical Review Committee.
I mean, while you're looking that up, Mike, if I could just...
It's on page 6 of the ordinance that you have in front of you. So it talks about the fact that personal marijuana cultivation by a single registered cardholder or 2 registered cardholders living together is permitted as an accessory use. The yes goes along with an accessory use, so you can do that as an accessory use.
So you're saying that doesn't require...
No.
Okay.
They don't have to go to...
No, they don't have to go.
They
No,
have
it's just making it clear that you're able to do that in your own home, so to speak, as an accessory use.
And that is the personal marijuana.
Right.
And so for Mr. Cotton, can you address the residential cooperative aspect of that? Is that the only one that needs any approvals then? See, I'm all for something that limits the, compassion centers, that limits some of the ideas that have gone on, in other towns as far as having a vapor lounge or whatever you want to call it. But I'm concerned about the individual aspect of this and the privacy issues as it relates to individual people who are trying to work every day and function, and that is what I've been concerned about since we first discussed all of this.
Sure, and so the special use permit is required for the residential cooperative compound, like you just mentioned, the compassion center, and then a non-residential cooperative, but only in a manufacturing zone.
Right. So I'd like to ask Mr. Cotton, just to comment, because this has been changed somewhat, I believe, since the first version, because it is just that one group. Could you just focus your comments on that one
From what I
group?
understand is that you're saying this is going to be a special permit for a residential co-op or a residential
Correct.
grow?
Yes.
From what the state says, it's only supposed to be an electrician that's supposed to go in there and inspect. I think privacy issues would be an issue. I mean, with HIPAA especially. I mean, that person's a patient. So why should that patient have another person other than an electrician come in and check out everything?
But let me just
in
ask
their
you
house?
this: if the town or through the technical review committee is not to know, which is like maybe 3 planning board members, but yet the electrician can, and that's the town's inspector electrician, or is that any electrician?
I think it'd be any electrician.
Does any electrician to make sure the electricity is...
It's up to...
So in any other case, you're hiring someone to come in and make sure you've got the adequate voltage, wattage, whatever.
Correct.
And you don't, for whatever you're going to be doing, but you don't have to designate yourself as a patient. But in this case, you kind of have to go to a board, a town board,
Yep.
which is a matter of public record. See that? And that's where I disagree with you, Mike, that this is like not hurting anybody. It does. It's a matter of public record that, you know, John Smith is a medical marijuana patient, and he's also growing for somebody else, and now he has to come in and discuss that. And I think there's not only that aspect that's dangerous in terms of, just one quick second, that's dangerous in terms of, you know, the person's job. I mean, we've seen instances, I believe there was an intern from URI, wasn't there, that was denied an internship because of, that she was a medical marijuana patient. There's that aspect, and I'm also concerned about the safety of this person, you know, where people know there's marijuana being grown wherever this person's doing it, even if, you know, to me that's a very dangerous thing.
And you know, Mary,
I've said that many times.
You did, and we heard those comments, and the way we revised it is to basically say the person themselves did not have to go. They can just send a representative.
But you have to do the address.
location. Yes, you do. Under zoning, you have to do an address.
Right, so it doesn't matter if it's a person or not. Like, if somebody says it's going to be, you know, 1 High Street, then it doesn't matter. Anybody can look up who lives there, and they know, that becomes a target. That house becomes a target. That's my concern with it. So the address that's being outed, if the person's not, it doesn't. It's 6 to 1. It does the same to me.
Yeah,
it's not a big secret of who lives where. So
Yeah, and we have to worry about house invasions, and a lot of patients do have children. So we always have to worry about that kind of stuff, and that's one of the main concerns of me.
May I make
Go ahead.
one other quick comment? And so I think at the workshop, you had talked to me a little bit afterwards, and I think I mentioned to you that I knew someone who had MS. You told me you'd come off all your other medications.
Correct.
And how toxic some of them were.
Correct.
And so I asked this person that I know if she was using any medical marijuana. And she told me that she wasn't, because she had teenagers at home and she didn't want to set an example of using this particular, but that multiple neurologists had suggested that she use it, that it would be good and better for her condition. So I just think it's interesting. So not just one neurologist, several had made that reference to her in relation to MS, in that case anyway. So I just thought that was interesting.
Well, I've lost my gallbladder, my appendix. I had pancreatitis and a flesh-eating disease from my medications, beta-seron, Copaxone, and the reason why I'm on cannabis is I had 1 in 5,000 chance of dying on Tisabrin. And I was doing experimental studies to advance the medication for MS, and they gave me cannabis to help out the side effects. Now I'm only on cannabis, and I've been on cannabis, only cannabis, for roughly around 13 years. Because I was approved for cannabis 6 years before this program even existed in Rhode Island. So, and I have 2 kids. I worry about that myself. But if you teach them correctly, and you put your medication safely in a safe, like it should be, and you do the correct measures with your garden, keep it in a locked and secured place, and not let anybody else know about it, I think everything's fine.
No, I just thought it's interesting. So that's, I mean, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have for this person.
Mike, I just had a question in regards to the cardholder representative. Who can be a representative?
going to ask, if you don't mind, that I know that
I'm going to hold off.
excuse me, Mary's questions were related to William, but I'd like to have the rest of the public hearing first, and then certainly we'll open it up and any questions. And if you have a question for somebody that came up, we could certainly ask them to respond to it. So thank you, William.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
How about just, Walter, how about the wireless?
Just turn around again, just a moment.
Perfect, thank you. Here we go. Hi, my name is Peter Benson.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm a quadriplegic. I broke my neck when I was 17. I started using medical marijuana about 5 years ago to control severe muscle spasms that I had that affected not only me, but my wife and my now 8-year-old and 3-year-old daughter, who slept in our bed every 2 hours with these spasms.
Excuse me, I think in the back of the room they're having a little trouble to hear you. Could you pick that up and hold it closer to yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'll get this quick. So,
We're going to make you work for it,
there
sorry.
you go. I'm not afraid of work.
That's better.
So I mean, that's my current situation. But what I want to speak to you guys about tonight is some of the things that William commented on, and that's about because I've been through both of these scenarios. When I first started medical marijuana, I started growing it because I had that right under state law in my basement. At that time, my daughter was 3 years old. It's a locked room. It was sealed off. She had no idea what was going on. As she became 5 years old, having play dates, now more into the public school system, having other kids at the house, me and my wife thought it was in the best interest not to grow in our home. I've testified many a times up at the State House and with the Attorney General, who listed many cases of home invasions, murders that happened, fires, and my concern is that restricting patients or caregivers to only grow in their residence can present an undue harm to my family. If I was forced to go, I am a caregiver and a patient as well, and I grow in a commercial area in my town because I don't want to put my family at risk. If somebody knows or smells, or I have a gardener or landscaper doing my leaves and they smell from a vent medical marijuana coming into my backyard, they know that it's there, and they may want to come by at midnight and break into my house and steal that marijuana. They may want to do harm to me or my wife. I'm not in a position, and my daughter, I'm not in a position to protect any one of them or myself. So that's a huge concern. And that's the decision that we made to not grow the medical marijuana in our home. Another big issue with when you're restricting somebody to their home, besides subjecting them to potential harm, is I don't know the legalities of it, but from a town council perspective, do you have, if this ordinance was to pass and only restrict people to grow in their home, let's use me as an example, even though I'm not a resident of Bristol, although I did live in Bristol growing up, and I was growing in my home and something was to happen, and my daughter or my wife was hurt. There was a home invasion or there was a fire. Sometimes that can happen. Who's responsible at the state level if there's the state law that I can grow in an industrial area? Does the town council have the ability to override state law in that situation? And if something was to occur and I was forced to grow in my home and something happened to me or my daughter or my wife from an unfortunate situation that very frequently happens with these marijuana grows, is the town responsible because they restricted me only to my home and overridden state law? Because state law does not restrict you to only be able to grow in your residence. So has the council thought about that from a legality perspective at all, or would that have any? Is that a good question? Is that something that we would be thinking about?
I'm going to ask the solicitor to respond to your question.
So what the state law did is the state law decriminalized medical marijuana. That's
1 ounce of medical marijuana.
Decriminalized it,
Yes.
right. With regard to where it can or cannot be grown, the state law actually doesn't address that. It doesn't say it can only be grown in an industrial zone or it can't be grown in a residential zone, because zoning is actually the power of the individual cities and towns. And so, therefore, it's up to each town council to decide whether or not it wants to have restrictions on where it's grown. So the whole idea of an individual who has a medical marijuana card like you being able to do it in your home, that is to respect and protect all of those privacy rights, etc. When you start doing multiple plants, particularly above 24, and you're actually into a distribution system, then the town, under its zoning ordinance and protecting the general public health and safety, has the right under its zoning ordinance, in my opinion, as I've advised the council, to put reasonable restrictions on where it's grown. So that's that. The zoning comes from the local level, not from the state level. The state level was the decriminalization of the possession of the medical marijuana.
So the zoning board, rather than restrict people just to residential grows, maybe the zoning board would have different zoning ordinances for people who are not comfortable or feel uncomfortable or unsafe by being only allowed to grow in their home. Couldn't the town council or the zoning board come up with a special ordinance for grows in a commercial area? Because once you leave your own home, there's really no other place to go to grow but some type of commercial area.
But this ordinance does allow growing in commercial areas. So
it does.
Yes, it does. Yeah. It's not. As a matter of fact, it's allowed in general business. It's allowed in
mixed use.
All the residential zones.
Okay, I was under the
Well, not the
impression
residential
that
cooperative.
it was
I'm talking personal, right? Personal use.
No, but we're like...
Residential cooperatives are by special use permit in the residential zones up to R15.
in the residential zones.
Right.
But what about the commercial?
Yeah, so then in the commercial zone and manufacturing, we have the non-residential cooperative, and for the compassion center, it's in a mixed use zone.
Yeah, unfortunately, the compassion centers are missing out on 60% of the population that needs the medicine.
Right, it's in the general business zone too. I just want to correct myself. It's in 2 zones for the compassion centers: general business and mixed use.
So to set up we know there's 3 compassion centers in the state of Rhode Island.
By state law, they've restricted it to 3. Yes,
absolutely, they did. I'm very familiar with that law and that bill. So I lost my train of thought there for a second, but so I don't think that ordinance that applies to the dispensaries would apply to somebody who was a caregiver growing in the industrial area. You're saying you have an ordinance in place for zoning for industrial areas that would cover dispensaries, but it wouldn't cover a caregiver who's trying to help out 5 other patients and grow their own medicine at the same time.
Well, if that caregiver applied for a special use permit, that caregiver could do that in that zone.
So every caregiver could almost be like a dispensary. And these dispensaries had to pay $250,000.
When you say dispensaries, you mean the compassion centers?
No, I don't call them compassion centers.
Okay, so that's what the state law calls them.
They're price prohibitive, and I don't
but we need to use the same terms. We're all in the same.
Yeah. So anyhow, they are allowed by special use permit in both a general business zone and a mixed use zone on Metacom Avenue.
But how about an individual caregiver? Is there an ordinance for them to grow in a commercial industrial area?
No.
Not as a dispensary, and that's where the problem is.
No.
I cannot, as you know, we can only have 3 dispensaries in Rhode Island. There cannot be a 4th one. There's supposed to be a oversight committee that was set up, and it's in that bill.
Peter, but we can't, and excuse me for interrupting you, but we can't control that part of it.
Right.
That has nothing to do with this particular ordinance. I hear what you're saying, but that's not, this commentary should be about the ordinance itself and how it relates. We don't have control over
So
how
just
many
to
there are.
fall back on the ordinance then,
So that's on the state level. That's
what would the response be for a caregiver who doesn't want to put his family or himself at jeopardy if we were not to let that individual caregiver only the dispensaries to grow in industrial areas? You just said that there is no ordinance for an individual caregiver to grow in an industrial area.
Well, there's something called a non-residential, right? Non-residential cooperative cultivation. So that could be a caregiver that's non-residential, and that zone would be the manufacturing zone or the industrial zone that you're talking about by special use permit.
So I think it probably may alleviate a lot of the concern if we spelled it out a little bit clearer that caregivers and patients are not only restricted to grow in their home, and there is a special ordinance out there if they decide to go ahead and use the commercial area.
Can I just ask a quick question? So because there's no zoning or regulation per the state, once they pass this law in all the municipalities, and we're here tonight as the first municipality trying to craft it, and your concerns are very valid, and your concerns of not being in your home. So in your situation, you go to your caregiver. Are they in a commercial area right now in their municipality, and that's why you're questioning the restriction, or are you going to a caregiver that lives in their own residence?
I'm a patient and a caregiver, so I don't have a caregiver for myself. I'm a patient, I'm allowed to grow up to 12 plants.
Yes, you are. Yes.
I'm also a caregiver, which means I'm allowed to grow up to 24 plants to take care of those 5 patients.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you would allow, and just for clarity, that wouldn't change.
And I do that, and I do that today in a commercial area.
That was my question.
Yes,
you do it in a
exactly.
commercial. That's where I was going with the question.
It is a commercial area. Yep. And there's and they have a board of directors. It's the board, the oversight. There's an oversight board for that. It's like a condo association board that manages those commercial areas where people would prefer to grow their marijuana for the reasons that I stated earlier.
Right.
And my biggest concern about in those reasons, and like the firefighters, and congratulations to the new marshal, but is the safety aspect of this. And as he stated out, and I appreciate what he said around the holidays as well. I just want to mention that, but I mean, that is my concern, is the safety of my wife and my 8-year-old daughter. I'm not going to put her at risk. If my town came up with an ordinance that made me grow in my home, and I had no other availability except to become some kind of dispensary.
So the answer, Pete, is what I'm hearing, excuse me, Peter, is what I'm hearing from the solicitor, and how we've gone through this a few times, is that yes, you can, but you need a special use permit, and that's the whole idea behind this ordinance, is to talk about word zoning. But I need to allow other people to speak, because we've had on the topic for a little bit.
Could I just get a clarification?
That's excellent, because when I read it, I just didn't see it spelled out very clearly. So I think there might need to be some clarification. That's all.
But it is definitely in the table, manufacturing zone or industrial zone by special use permit.
But can I go back to the definition? And this is what
Sure.
I'd like to be clear about, because you raised a point that had not been raised before. So it says, for the cultivation, non-residential cooperative cultivation means the use of a building or portion thereof for the cultivation of medical marijuana by 2 or more cardholders where such building is located. Suppose you're just one card. So in your case, you're one card holder and you're getting for the other. Or do you have or does that make you
bring
have
up
two?
a great point. I'm one card holder. I'm not considered a co-op. So I don't have to go through what a co-op would normally have to go through in the state of Rhode Island. But I am one card holder, although I have 5 cards. The way, like as you stated it, 2 or more. You're right. That if I was 2 or more people licenses, I have 5 licenses. I have my 5 patient licenses and my own. 2 or more people with that law that you just stated, that piece of the bill refers to 2 or more people growing cooperatively together with 2 different licenses. I hold as one individual both, So that 2 or more does not apply to me.
Right, so that's my point. So what, basically, the scenario that Peter set forth, which is that
If he's alone-
safety, he doesn't want to grow in his house, there is no place under this that he would be allowed to go in an industrial area unless that definition were changed.
Right, I would have to
one or
go,
more,
and I
yes.
would have to get another grower, file as a co-op, and there's different rules and different things, different processes that would have to happen. And again, you know, I don't want to have to be forced to grow with somebody else if I don't have to. I would rather keep it private to myself. I don't tell anybody where I grow, and I don't tell anybody, you know, that's why when you get a license as a patient, it comes with a number on it and not a name.
Sure.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going
Thank
to
you
move.
guys very much.
I need to allow other
Absolutely,
people to speak.
I appreciate the time.
Of course. Thank you. Please.
Hi, my name's Jeffrey Mata, and this is my brother Michael Mata.
Welcome.
We have a co-op in Bristol, and we've been residents here for about our whole life. So we can pretty much tell you about some of the regulations. We're registered with the state police right now. We've also had the Bristol police in our shop. We have respect from everybody in the shop. Everybody's respectable people. The thing about the limits, and to correct you on the 60, it's actually 48.
Yeah, it is 48.
It doesn't go 5.
You know, when he said 5 and 12, you're totally correct, and I believe state law also says 48.
And that's the thing. With the new state law, we're required to go in front of the state police to sign a paper with our names and our numbers on it, and basically, photo ID.
So I think you're kind of exposed already as it is, you know? You're kind of out there already.
Exactly.
To bring more people out, it just really doesn't make much sense. You're just pulling...
We don't like to...
We're out because we already know. We've had the police through our system, you know...
We're both parents. We both have multiple kids.
Yeah, we work.
I'm a full-time electrician. He's a full-time carpenter. It's hard enough to come in and work these hours, take care of all these patients with all these disabilities. And, you know, going by the numbers, 48 and 24, I mean, you never have 48 plants in there.
Never. We'd have to have the whole building.
Because you start with 24 veg plants. So,
Could you give us... To ask you a question on that.
Yeah.
Could you give us clarity, is that if you don't have that many and you don't need a special use permit, why would it be a problem in what this ordinance states?
Because...
Just for clarity.
Because we're as a co-op. We're registered as a co-op because we were told to register as a co-op.
Gotcha.
There's 2 of you.
After the Bristol police came through,
Thank you for the clarity.
They suggested it to us that because they called the state police and they realized that we were not registered co-op and we were in a commercial zone. So that's why they came in.
Thank you for the clarity.
Just one quick, that's per state law, though, why you had to go with the state police.
Yes, that's
Let's convey this so the public realizes why that happened, let's refer to the state law, because the state law is the law right now, so let's not be construed that, you know, what's not the law and what we're trying to do here, whatever is the law, let it be known to the people that it is the law.
It is the law.
Okay.
It is the law. We had to do that, and that's exactly what we did. But to go out and have to get special use permits and change limits when, you know, if we do have 40...
We're speaking on behalf of other people, too.
You know, a lot of people ain't going to come out here.
They have professional jobs. They don't want to, you know...
But we're not really...
Believe me, a lot.
We really
I need you to do one at a time if you would.
Okay.
Just so we can all hear you, that's all.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
But, like, we're out here speaking on these other people that don't want to be out here to speak, which we, you know, got really nervous to even come out here ourselves because we want to be private. The last thing we want to do is have to go get a special permit and you're going to change the limits when you don't even really know what the patients are taking per month. If we each have 5 of them, they pretty much go through almost 2 pounds of weed within a month and a half. You know, and it's like they said, you get some different plants.
Made into other forms of medicine. There's edibles and all different kinds of medicine. So it's, you know, CBDs, we grow CBD medicine, all different types.
We like to have the 48 and 24 and stuff like that because it keeps us safe.
The number's really just a little ridiculous. The 48 is like a...
We never even reached that.
We would have to have a whole, maybe 6 employees or 8 employees working underneath you to do something like that. That's a big, big setup. So So we're considered a co-op, but yet we're a little bit. You understand what I mean? Like we don't even go over 8 plants in our room. So, the most we'd like to get up to is maybe 16 or something like that to keep all of our patients happy.
Just out of curiosity, because it varies, like you stated, to each patient.
Yes.
And,
you're not,
this is all new for us, and we've been educating ourselves. And one question I have is, other than marijuana, because the patients need this, it's a form of prescription prescribed by the doctor to give the authorization for the registered card. But just like any prescription, where is the limit of how much a patient will use for their condition, such as comparable to other medications that are prescribed by doctors? So how can anyone come up with a number then, if it's not? I don't know if you're understanding what I'm trying to say.
It's true. It's so hard because one person consumes that much of it, and then the other person will take that much.
But is it authorized by the doctors?
Tolerance has
doesn't the doctors actually oversee a patient with their sickness?
Yeah. No, it hasn't come to that.
There's no dosage. No dosage.
One day we like to see it that way, and that's the way he's the best helping people that way.
Well, just getting people off prescription drugs, you guys can probably all say it in this room, it's better for everybody. It's better for everybody in the long run to get people off oxycodones and things that our stepsister, she has all kinds of problems. She took about 20 to 30 pills.
Yeah, I need you to do one at a time, if you would, please. Thank you.
She took about 30 pills, okay? She's now taking about 5 to 10 pills, okay, because of medical marijuana. And she don't know what she's going to need. She likes to eat it, so it's different. So you have to give more medicine for that person. You know what I'm saying? So as for it affecting us, it affects us in that way because we like to be protected with those limits. Not to say we're ever going to go even near that, but to have that it's in the state law that we just went through the state police to get, because we want to make sure we're totally legit. We have families. We're trying to be respectable towards everybody in the town of Bristol. We just think that going to get a special permit.
When we came into the building too as well, we let everybody know in the building if there's any problem with the smell, let us know. We'll go out and grab more filters, and the filters are costly. It costs almost $1,000 for just a filter. So a can filter and the actual fan itself. So we went out and bought extra fans. When one of the guy on the side of us says, "Oh yeah, I've been getting some smell," so we worked with all our neighbors there, and we didn't really think we had any issues until this kind of popped up. And like I said, we're here because we're already out, so we figure it's you see me, it's fine.
I'm not disagreeing, but it goes back to this new territory. Well, it's not new; it's been around. But this is medical marijuana we're speaking of. Medical, okay,
yes,
and it's a treatment.
Yes.
And is this going to be the only medical?
Is
this going to be the only Let me continue.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is this going to be the only medical product that's not going to have regulations on it, such as all the other medical stuff that treats patients in our country, in our state, in our towns?
Yeah, I know, but all that stuff, is it really regulated that well?
I'll tell you what. Let's make sure that we stay. Let's stay on topic on this, and certainly I believe your comments were on topic on it, and I think that question was also on topic. But I don't think that you need to. It's kind of not in the vein of what you were responding to. So, is there anything else that you wanted to add? I'm not shutting you down. I want to make sure that we covered everything.
That's everything. We just wanted to clarify with you guys with limits and what we actually went through as a co-op to register
so if
in the
we
state.
are a co-op now, and we never grow more than 24. So we still have to go apply for a special use permit, correct?
That's my question for Mike, actually.
Yeah, I think they're a non-conforming use.
Let Mike respond, please.
I believe if you're already in existence, you become a non-conforming use. So the answer for you is no, but for some of the new people who you say don't want to come forward and identify themselves, if they already did not exist, they would have to go through this process.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is Joanne Lepinen. I'm the Executive Director of Rhode Island Patient Advocacy Coalition.
Welcome.
Thank you. I've been working with this law since 2007, every day of my life. This law is very confusing as it is.
Amen.
Very confusing. Number one problem that we have is if you put, 10 officers around a table, they will give you 10 variations of what the law says. We have even had interesting conversations with the Attorney General's office about what this law says. And we've all been working at it since 2006. One of the things that just hits me over the head is if every town and city is going to adjust the plant limits, we already don't know what the plant limits are. How on earth are patients going to cope? I worry every day because we've got patients and caregivers out there who are at risk because they're not following the law, because they don't understand the law, because they've got it wrong. So that is a very practical problem. And the other, our goal is, it's all about access to medicine for patients. Number one problem with this program, it's a very successful program. And for people who have access, I'm not exaggerating when I see miracles every day. Probably way more than half of the patients I see are trying to get off opiates. There are people whose lives are being extended. I can introduce you to patients who would not be alive today if it weren't for this program. People have gotten their lives back. They've gotten their families back. They've gotten their communities back. This is a program that affects not just the patient, it affects their families, the entire community. People are able to work again. It's astonishing, really. And Bristol has been a very friendly place. I talked about that the last time I was here when you had the workshop. Bristol has been so friendly, and your police force has been wonderful. And because I can tell you, just real quick, it's very scary for a patient or a caregiver if a police officer shows up at the door and says, "Are you growing marijuana?" Everybody still has that, uh-oh. But the police officers here have been so respectful and so friendly. And so I just can't speak enough about them, because you don't get that everywhere. So it comes as a shock to us to see this ordinance, because I know that you might not intend it this way, but this ordinance is really hostile to patients. It really is, for a couple of reasons. We don't have enough medicine for the patients. We don't. You've heard the problems with, not everybody can go to the Compassion Center. We wish this could be like going to CVS and paying your copay and call it a day. But that's not what it's like. It's a very difficult medicine to even understand, to figure out what's going to work for you, number one. But the big problem is the cost. Patients can't afford the compassion centers, and there's no third-party reimbursement. There's no insurance company picking up the tab here. And also the compassion centers often don't have what the patients need, what a particular patient needs anyway. So therefore, we are still so dependent on individual growers to produce that medicine. We are so dependent. So what we try to do is take the people who are responsible, who have achieved success. And that was not easy to come by. When we started this program, 2006, nobody knew how to grow marijuana. The only people who knew how to do that were drug dealers. And it was a very difficult process to really acclimate and teach people how to do it. But we've gotten there. And over the years, we have had people learn, and they didn't learn because they necessarily wanted to. They learned because they didn't have any choice. So we had the most unlikely people that you can imagine learning to grow marijuana. People who would rather be doing anything else, believe me, but it became a necessity. Those people learned how, they taught other people. Now we actually have classes. We have a certification program for growing. And, we never thought we'd see the day. But it's successful, but there's not enough of it. We don't have enough of good people doing this. And I'll tell you, the number one thing, when you're going to grow, the number one thing you are taught for anything else is be very careful about who you tell. Because, people have this idea that they're going to get a big score if they break into your house and steal plants, even though they might not know what to do with them, especially kids. So the idea is you don't tell anybody, because that puts you at risk. It puts those plants at risk. And if you're growing, I'm growing from an MS patient and a cancer patient and someone who suffers from horrible, debilitating chronic pain, that's their medicine. It's my job to protect that. The last thing in the world I'm going to do is come to the town hall and announce that I am growing. So that is why so many of the people who are here tonight are representing the patients and caregivers of Bristol who are growing. But those people aren't going to show their faces here. And they shouldn't. They really shouldn't. They're advised not to. So the first problem, I think the ACLU And their letter outlines the privacy problems. And the state statute, I think, works very hard to make sure this is a confidential program. Nobody's supposed to know who's in this program. Nobody's supposed to know who's growing, and that's for good reason. And this ordinance undermines that. Now, it's not true. It's not completely true that the state doesn't say where you can grow. The state does say. What they said in the original law was, okay, you have to grow indoors. That's all we're going to tell you. No outside growing, because then you're not going to have any security. You've got to make sure it's grown indoors. They stopped there. But then, over a year ago, they came back and said, all right, we're going to address the issue of people who are growing a lot of plants. And we are going to say where they're going to be. And so they said, all right, we're going to take the people who are growing what we consider to be a lot of plants, 48. And we're going to say, if anybody's growing 48 plants, you can only do that as a non-residential co-op. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to tell you that you have to report to the local building inspector. And your local building inspector has to say you're compliant with the zoning requirements and the building code. And you have to register with the state police. Well, we sort of took that to mean they really don't want anybody growing large grows, because so few people are going to do that. And the way that's been working is it varies town to town. There are some towns where the building inspectors are, open to it, friendly, and there's no public hearing, there's no special use permit. Other towns, because quite frankly, the state did not give the towns much guidance. So it varies town by town. So there are certain towns where there are a lot of co-ops, because the building inspector's, easy to work with. If someone gets told, oh, you have to go to get a special use permit, because that's what some of the building inspectors say now in parts of the state. What we say is, really? You want your picture on the front page of the paper? Do you have a lot of money to protect you? If you can afford a security system, the likes of which the compassion centers would have, maybe you want to consider that. But one person did not realize how public that would be until after he set up his co-op, only to find that a reporter was doing a story about it, and he was terrified. That was his job. He was convinced he was going to lose his job if this got out. So eventually the reporter, and it's really hard to tell a reporter anything. I don't know if you've had that experience.
Joanne, it is Joanne, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but we do need to move forward with this. I'd like you to...
Okay, I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, if you would, please.
There are a lot of conflicts with the state law. It's not just expanding it. It's not just further regulation. There are certain people who can have 7.5 ounces. Nobody gets more than 5. There are certain people who can have more than 24 plants as an individual. This says in no event can you have more than 24. That is the conflict with the state law. The other problem is there's no criteria. So even if you say to someone, listen, okay, just come down, it's so easy, we'll just show us your licenses. Well, why am I doing that if I'm going to get approved? Is there a criteria whereby I may not get approved? And if so, what is that criteria? Because it's not stated here. And also, I'm curious as to the reasons why. So I'm hoping that you'll look at this again, because if this goes forward, we're going to be resolving these issues in court. We would really rather not. I don't know why people want to defend a lawsuit.
Do you think Section 7.0 of the state law confidentiality section speaks in volumes to address municipalities in what we're trying to accomplish?
You're not speaking to the section of the Medical Marijuana Act that speaks to confidentiality. That's what I'm concerned with. I'm not an expert in municipal law, but I know that when the state grants the patients and caregivers protections, and then the towns and cities take it away, we have a conflict that's going to get challenged.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Burns, Bristol.
Welcome.
Thank you. Something in my gut just doesn't feel right listening to this entire discussion. First of all, if this is medical, why is it outside the medical channels? Is there a doctor that's spoken to the town council about medical marijuana? Has anybody thought about the fact that the youth usage of marijuana in the nation is the highest in Rhode Island? Youth. Middle school, high school. Middle school and high school reporting from a very reliable source, recently reported by the Drug Abuse Coalition, indicates that a primary source for youth acquisition of marijuana is people with medical cards.
So,
We've
Mike,
got 3,500 caregivers in Rhode
Mike, are
Island.
your points to say that is it for, or it sounds like you're against the ordinance? Is that right? I'm sorry.
I'm concerned that the ordinance needs to be thought through very carefully.
So, are you saying it's not? I'm sorry. I'm just looking for clarity.
I'm just posing some facts before the council in their deliberation as they go forward with this, because this is an important issue.
But all due respect, the ordinance that is being...
It's a state law, I understand that.
Right, it's a state law. All
we don't have control over that. I guess what I'm trying to...
The medical marijuana,
I mean... control over how you can allow at least the zoning portion of this, I understand. So I would think very carefully about doing that. That's all I'm saying. You've got 3,500 caregivers in the state of Rhode Island, is that correct? Anybody know? Yeah. Everyone can have 24 plants, 24 mature plants, which produces about 2 pounds per cycle. Maybe.
Mike, I would ask that you direct your questions here. Just certainly, if you had a question for someone, we can have them come up.
And I think if you add that up, it's a fair amount of marijuana that's produced every year. And to Ed's point, how do we know how much marijuana is used by individuals in a medical sense? The other thing about the zoning part of this is there's obviously a safety issue of tremendous concern here. Of this being located in a neighborhood where somebody might find out about it, break in. I think that's been brought up by the folks who are trying to ease the restrictions on the zoning. So I just throw these out because I think it's a very serious matter. I think it impacts on the youth as we go forward. This needs to be controlled very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pat Romashitis. I represent a patient advocacy group called Green Cross of Rhode Island.
Welcome, Pat.
Thank you very much for taking your time so far this evening. I'm going to make my statement short and sweet because you've heard everyone else's story. I want to just reemphasize what Joanne said about the special use permit and what would contain as far as whether or not I could be denied or passed as a caregiver. That's not really addressed here, and I believe that that is a further issue that you should look into if you're going to stipulate that they need a special use permit. And addressing the special use permit, I believe that if you require these people to get a special use permit and that they have to notify everyone within their 200-foot area, and it's also going to be on public record, makes them a target for criminals. If I were to be living in this town and I fall under your jurisdiction and I did my special use permit and my house got broken into or my family got hurt because of it, I think you could guarantee the town would be sued and you would be liable. All due respect to the solicitor, he didn't even know how many plants were supposed to be when he originally spoke. So as far as his idea of what the law is, you should really take into concern the fact that you could be opening yourself up to a severe lawsuit in case this happens. And I also believe that it's a privacy issue versus HIPAA as far as my rights as a patient to be able to grow what the state law says. So I wanted to bring those 2 points up, and again, thank you very much for your time tonight. I hope you take those into consideration, and I just wanted to be on public record that I believe that you would leave yourself liable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak against? I'm going to do that 3 times. Is there anyone else to speak against? Is there anyone else to speak against?
Make a motion. This closes the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So what questions does the council have? Or comments?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a few comments about all this. I think that the information from Mike Burns and the gentleman that follows is very interesting to us. And I've been trying to learn about it. I think one of the problems that I've had with this, and perhaps some other councilors share it with me, that we don't know enough about it. I don't know how much you've got to absorb to have an effect. I don't know how many plants are needed for every time you use some marijuana. I don't even know how big the plants are. So we've had to learn a lot, and we haven't learned enough yet. But I have questioned one doctor who I know and who's very much respect him. He's an eye doctor, and he says that he's had a lot of patients that have asked him to prescribe marijuana. But he's found out that the effect of it wears off in about 1 hour. That's why I asked this first gentleman some questions. So therefore, if the prescription were accorded to that patient in question, what does he do? Use marijuana every hour or every 2 hours or what? I mean, it's just if the favorable effect doesn't last very long, then that has a lot of bearing on what needs to be obtained by the patient. And this particular doctor has refused to provide any prescriptions because, in all considerations, including the issue of the time effectiveness, he doesn't think that he would be serving his patients well to prescribe it. That's one thing. But the overall question, which I think perhaps is what Mike Burns was touching on, is I'm worried for the United States and for the state of Rhode Island and for the town of Bristol that medical marijuana is going to become everybody's marijuana. And that testimony that already those who are starting out in life and looking to try everything are obtaining marijuana from those sources which are intended by law to be only medical marijuana is certainly disquieting and is an issue, I think, in the overall thing. And my feeling that the principle of our in the town of Bristol trying to project from our need to obey state law to control it is basically a good intention, but I'm not sure that we've found out the right way to do it. And, you know, we pass ordinances here, and some of them are very easily followed by citizens, and some of them are very easily controlled by the police. But this is an ordinance where it might be pretty darn good if everybody would follow the rules. But I think it's an ordinance that's extremely difficult to administer by the law. You're not going to go out and count the plants someplace. We're not going to have communication with all the people involved. We're not going to know whether a grandson growing marijuana for his grandfather who has a medical need is going to take some of that to school and use it and sell it. We need to really think of all those ramifications. Now, I think it's an awful shame that these compassion centers, of which there are 3 in Rhode Island, are not better run. Because if a citizen can grow marijuana at a moderate price, why can't the compassion center do it? And there would be a big advantage if we had one of these compassion centers running a straightforward, efficient deal where they could cut the price way down, and then the others would have to do the same thing, supply and demand. Because I think in the end, if marijuana is to be prescribed by doctors, and it will be, that a much better system would be for the state, or any state, to provide a place to buy the stuff, rather than asking people to grow it in their own house. We don't ask people to grow their spinach. We don't ask them to grow their carrots. Why should they grow their marijuana? But unfortunately, my desire that it all come from the compassion center, maybe through the medical center, is abraded by the fact that the cost is too high. That ought to be fixed. And so this issue of privacy is one that came up tonight from several of you and also from the ACLU's letter. I'm a little puzzled by that. I understand that people with illnesses may be embarrassed. Maybe they don't want anybody to know what they're taking for other illnesses. But why is the marijuana so different? Why is the privacy such a big issue? If you're taking a legitimate prescription from a serious and legitimate doctor, what difference does it matter? I do accept the notion that if somebody applies to the zoning and goes through it, everybody will know why, and they'll know who the person is and all that. And you know, in a wonderful town like we have, you've got to assume everybody knows everything. As a matter of fact, the best way to get some word around is to whisper a secret to a friend at the coffee shop in the morning, and by the next morning, it'll come back to you from 3 or 4 other people, perhaps slightly changed, and that's going to apply to something like people trying to get a prescription. So, I guess I'd got to say that while I believe this proposed ordinance has improved greatly, thanks to our very efficient solicitor, and especially with the recent addition of a page of clarifications of our intentions, it's a big improvement. It still doesn't satisfy me, and I can't bring myself to vote for it at this juncture. And I'd like to actually suggest to my colleagues that while this has been a long and arduous development of the ordinance, that maybe we still need to go back to the drawing board to respond to some of the suggestions that have been forthcoming this evening, and maybe even respond to some of my own concerns.
No, I just wanted to, in many respects I agree with Halsey. I think there's a couple of different issues, and this was a perfect example of many years that I spent in the legislature, often in the committees where they were multiple sides. The chairman would say, go out and work on this together and don't come back here until you all have an agreement. And this would have been an ideal situation, I think, for the town and the solicitor to work with the people that have the information, the knowledge, the people who have testified here, who were here the evening of the workshop. Because I think there's continuously been issues that have been raised. One today by Peter in terms of the manufacturing zone. If you don't want to grow individually, you don't want to grow it in your home. And I think that if everybody's reasonable about it, maybe we could come to some agreement on that. I'm not sure, because we have a state law that provides people with the ability to do this without any stipulations. And I understand why we want to have this, but we want to protect ourselves from certain entities, not necessarily every individual person who's using medical marijuana. I think I'm just not persuaded that the privacy is in place. I think it's dangerous for the person. I think to Halsey's point of why people wouldn't come forward. First of all, no one comes forward and says, I take this, this, and this medication. We're not there saying, who takes Lipitor, raise your hand. It's so why should somebody who takes marijuana have to say it? And I think that it's still a stigma. It's still technically an illegal drug, and although becoming decriminalized and so forth, and there's lots of move around the country to change that. The fact of the matter is that people are working and they could jeopardize their employment for multiple reasons, even if it is medical. I imagine, particularly maybe in the defense industry and other places, that you wouldn't want anybody to know that you're taking that for a reason. I think it's been very educational to learn that the number of people, I know it's been addressed at all the conversations that we've had, who have come off of opiates onto medical marijuana. And when we talk about marijuana and the extent of that being used, there's a huge crisis of opiate use and overuse in this country and in this state. So it seems to me that that would be a good thing. And as far as the issues, I think, of how long it lasts, I mean, and if, Mike Burns' point about kids getting it from medical marijuana cards, I think if those are abuses, that needs to be addressed through the legislation and through enforcement. I mean, this is a state law, and so I'm not trying to, shift the burden, but the thing is, we're trying to address a law that's already in effect. And I think one of the things that was when people testified at the workshop, They talked about how people wouldn't want to jeopardize their cards by doing something wrong because they needed the medical marijuana. Well, if this is finding their way into the hands of the wrong people, then I would respectfully suggest they are jeopardizing their cards, and that needs to be addressed by whatever the enforcement mechanism is in the law. And I would imagine that this issue will be one that is constantly or continuously tweaked at the legislative level to address a myriad of issues. So I'm hoping that all those things will be addressed. You know, like if that's falling into the hands of the wrong people, if people are selling it, or if kids are getting their hands on it, I'm hoping that the people here who spoke will take that responsibility seriously and try to address that. But in the meantime, just as I said at the first reading, I'm just not persuaded that this is the best legislation. I personally think it is a lawsuit waiting to happen, and so I am not personally in support of going forward at this time.
Are you sure?
And he's going to do wrap-up.
As I was listening tonight, I hear a lot of big issues here in regards to privacy, people being worried about getting broken into their homes, and people having to come forward in public. And I'd like to know from the solicitor, somebody to sort of take me through that zoning process when they do have to come in front of the zoning board, because I think there's a lot of confusion around that. I'm hearing that, a lot of nervousness around that.
I think it's a great question. So you don't have to go to the zoning board unless you get to the threshold of 24 to 48 plants. If it's 12 or under, you don't have to go to anyone. And we're hearing in testimony tonight that up to 8 plants takes care of more than one person. So if someone is growing up to 12 plants, they can do that. They don't have to come to any town official. If you're going to grow between 12 and 24, then you only go through, you don't have to go through a full zoning board process. So you just go to the building official, you make sure you've got the electrical permits, et cetera, et cetera. So the zoning process is really when you're going to, and this is why you have the power, in my opinion, under the zoning code, when you start getting to 24 and more plants, that's a big operation. There are going to be neighbors around you who are going to be concerned about that. And so therefore, the purpose of going through the special use permit at that point is so that, yes, if you want to get that big and you want to operate, you got to go through some kind of process whereby you have to meet the standards of a special use permit under the zoning code. So really, before all this, you know, and even at that point, you can designate a representative. No question that you have to operate, you have to identify the parcel. You have to, because you have to give notice. But if the person themselves who are actually consuming the medical marijuana does not want to be identified, they don't have to be. People can make implications, whatever. So
who would be eligible to be a representative? It's not
whoever you
stated.
appoint. You could appoint a relative, a friend, a lawyer, whoever you want to appoint as your designate. There's no restriction on who you appoint to represent you.
But the 48 plants is not allowed in any way. It's not allowed anywhere. So it really comes down to the 24 mature plants and the 12 seedlings that have to come for the special use.
No, the
non-residential cooperative that you have described as 48 mature plants and 24 seedlings is not allowed anywhere, not in any zone except for the one manufacturing zone.
Correct.
Right.
For a special use permit. Right.
Right, but so does the residential cooperative that is less numbers. You're saying that if it's, you're saying if you want to be a big grower of 48 plants, then you have to come. I'm saying that what it says in here is not
24 plants.
Right, 24 plants is when you have to get a special use permit, is when it starts.
But that is what I said. I said as long as you're growing under 24 plants, you don't have to go through the public zoning process.
Mike, can I ask one other basic question?
Halsey, one moment. I know Tim was in the middle, and I gave everybody the opportunity. So.
Okay.
And Mike, I just wanted to go over the, thank you, Mr. Chairman, residential cooperative cultivation. You mentioned that if they were already doing that now today, there was a group that came up, and I apologize.
It would be like any zoning law.
They said they're already grandfathered in.
That's right. Any zoning law is only prospective. It cannot be retroactive. So if there's someone who's operating as a co-op today, they will become what's called a legal non-conforming use upon the adoption of this ordinance. Now, if they wanted to expand, et cetera, then they'd have to come back. But if they're just doing what they're doing now, they would be as you
Is that stated in this ordinance? I didn't see that anywhere.
No, you don't have to state in the ordinance. No matter what zoning ordinance you adopt affecting anything in town, it can only by law be prospective. And so, for instance, if an ordinance that says you've got to have a minimum of 1 acre to build something on, and then you were to change it to a half acre, anyone who's sitting on the 1 acre at that point is grandfathered. So it's a similar analogy here.
Great. And then there was a section LM, and it talks about in other areas in regards to a sign, where you have to prominently have a sign. I was just wondering if you could...
Yeah, that comes straight out of state law.
State law,
We are not making that up. That's right verbatim from state law.
And I think I had one last question in regards to compassion centers. It looks like it's zoned for general business and not manufacturing, and I was just curious as to...
Well, because there's a lot of traffic for compassion centers, you can imagine. It's almost like going to a retail store. Lots of people going in and out, lots of vehicles, because by design, they're inviting people in as if it's a store. We're trying to preserve the integrity of the manufacturing zone where you don't have retail-type uses. We want manufacturing is where things are made, not where things are sold. So that was the rationale behind that, if that makes some sense.
So that's why it's zoned, it looks like it's general business. And Medicom mixed use?
Exactly, and mixed use also.
Okay, for compassion center. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ed. Speaking of the Compassion Center, since this is new to the table index, would other zoning laws that are already on the books affect when it goes into that area, such as the parking and all the issues that might be raised or at that?
Those things would be looked at in connection with the application for a special use permit.
Okay. Just real quickly, because...
and as you know, I think it's important to repeat, and someone said it tonight, there are only 3, right now state law only allows 3 compassion centers, none of which exist in Bristol. So state law would have to be changed, number one, and then someone would want to build one in the town of Bristol before this is going to affect them.
Mm-hmm.
Just like to thank everyone who came out and shared their comments. This is a delicate issue, and us as elected officials, this is a tough decision. And we as a council, we stated before, we take our time with all these tough issues and going forward. Just for the record, I think at this time, I think my colleagues, I know I do, there's a couple questions that we might have to go over with our solicitor going forward, and some of those might be the legalities that we were just presented by the ACLU tonight. Look in depth on that, because I think going forward we just need to solidify for the protection of our residents in our town. And when we speak about our residents in our town, not to be disingenuous to medical marijuana patients, but we care about the welfare and well-being of you, but we also care about the well-being and welfare of the town as a whole. And when my colleagues stated state law on how they kind of left out and up to the municipalities to take this into consideration, that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to cause harm to anybody, but we're trying to craft something that puts it on the records to protect everybody, because you could get both sides of the argument, because it exists here in our town, and they are in neighborhoods, and the same concerns, I agree with you. Once it gets exposed, will these things happen even more at an alarming rate? And it's not fair to the patients, but we have to think of our neighborhoods in a town going forward, because I only think this is going to become a larger issue, and we're just trying to be proactive, and we're going to take our time with it. And some of the other things is the amounts. and we already addressed the non-conforming, the caregivers in commercial areas. Maybe we can discuss that. But, you know, when we start going abroad, I think that takes away from what we're trying to accomplish with zoning and regulation. So we got to find that balance and respect both sides for everyone who lives here in the town. So I think at this time, I'm willing to discuss more to get, you know, more answers with our solicitor to go forward. So when we do, you know, address this on the books for our zoning and regulation, because I will say, even though I'm postponing my decision tonight, I believe there should be zoning and regulation going forward, and I'm willing to hear the aspects of how to craft that where it is suitable for both sides. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask one clarification, Mike. That didn't clear to me in all these documents. Is it required that the growth of the plants be indoors with those lights? You can't, next July, plant them in your back garden?
No, you cannot.
Okay. So that bears a lot on the some of the details raised on this privacy issue. Yeah. And are those lights expensive and complicated? And
I have never been in the business myself.
Okay.
Just real quickly to his point is in a residential use or in a building, I know in non-residential cooperative cultivation it says building or portion thereof. Can you just explain the portion thereof?
Right. So there may be a building that's divided into a lot of different units. That's all.
Yeah. And another concern of the balance in neighborhoods is you know, your privacy. Obviously, you're in your house, but and you do it in your house, but you know, you have children next door to an occupant, and if they go in their backyard and start smoking marijuana, to the concerns of the children in society today. Those are the questions we get also, can my kid go in my backyard now, or are they going to be smoking out in the backyard because they have that right? That's just another question that was brought up.
So I heard a motion, I believe, or it sounded like you wanted to continue. Did I hear that?
I would like to make a motion to continue to this to the December 16th meeting, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to share 2 seconds here. First off is that thank you for all the information that was shared, and also thank you to the people who have nothing to do with this particular conversation, and you sat here and were part of it, and we appreciate your patience. A couple things. One is that I happen to disagree with a couple of comments that were made by colleagues. One, which is that we can't just do nothing. That is unacceptable. And the reason why it's unacceptable is that there are towns in Rhode Island where we're talking about the 5 and the 10 and the 15 percenters. So the people that were in front of us tonight gave us the impression, and I believe it's a real one, that they're good people, honest people who want to be a good neighbor. This addresses things past that, because there are not those people out there. And that's part of what we have to focus on. We can't just pretend that this doesn't happen. So we are looking through this. I don't believe that there is a perfect ordinance on our books. I also believe that there were some questions brought up tonight that I didn't know the answer to either. So before I vote on it, I'm glad we're continuing. We'll get those answers. But by the same token, I also believe that we must do something. South Kingstown, if I'm correct, has a challenging establishment, we'll put it that way. And that is just not what I see happening in Bristol. And if we do nothing, then we open ourselves up for that possibility. So the flip is, though, is that doesn't mean that we don't care, and it doesn't mean that we're not sensitive to these things, because we are. If we weren't, we would have taken an hour and 15 minutes to listen and discuss all of this. So we're open-minded. I've said this many times. We are a reasonable council. So we're going to take a look at this. We're going to look at a couple of questions that came up. I know I had a couple. We can continue this through the 16th. What I would ask my colleagues is this, is that if you have a specific issue, if you could share it with the solicitor prior to next meeting so we could address those things right away, because we did take a lot of time on this, and it's great that we did. It's very important, but I'd like to make it a little less more brief, if you will.
And I just want to point out that you're voting to continue the closed session. So on the 16th,
Thank you.
You can have discussion with staff,
Right.
but it's the
Because we already had the public hearing.
Right,
Thank
exactly.
you. That's a great point.
So moved, amended. Thank you.
I think that it needs to be important
You already closed it.
that we have a plan, so we don't come back. I mean, we've discussed, I feel like I've discussed the same points for 3 meetings, the workshop, the first reading, and this meeting, and any other time we've discussed that. So I would like to ask that if we're going to come up, I agree with the chairman that we need to have something that prevents certain types of facilities. But, so I agree with that aspect, but yet we've got a lot more in here than just that. I really
Agreed.
think that we have to, I think the solicitor and, those involved with this drafting need to maybe sit down with Joanne or some of the other caregivers and users that have come to the meetings. They've been here, a couple of them, for the hour and a half or 2 hours that we had the workshop. They've been here tonight, and I think they could shed some information that maybe would solve the problem, because I don't think we all want to come back on the 16th, or whether we put it off again and not have a resolution to this.
And what I would suggest to everyone who's out there tonight and anyone who's watching on television, this proposed draft ordinance is in the public realm. You all have it, or you can get a copy from the clerk's office. What would be helpful is if individuals want to put suggestions right on this document and forward them to my office, or forward them, make it easy, forward them to the town clerk, and we will then provide them to me, because you can take what we've written, and if you think it can be improved upon, and there are sections that should be amended, mock it up, give it to Lou, he'll give it to me, and that'll be an efficient way of reacting.
Perfect. So that's what we're going to do from here, and I would ask my colleagues to do the same, is that there's specific questions that you have, reach out to the solicitor directly and express those. Mary, you've mentioned that you've had the same comment a couple of times, so let's make sure that those are addressed. I know we all have a couple of questions, and again, but we have a motion and a second. All in favor to continue the closed session to our next meeting of December 16th?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Where were we? The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, this is Ordinance 2015-22. We're at item C3. Okay. This is an amendment to the town code to allow for a larger than currently existing parking prohibited section of Goulart Avenue. This is the second reading for adoption.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the second reading for Chapter 16 motor vehicles pertaining to Goulart Avenue with all the department recommendations and per our ordinances.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, the next 2 items we did have a little bit of a discussion about these at the outset of the meeting. Basically, what's being provided to the council is sort of an either-or ordinance arrangement. Okay, the council will recall that it did have a workshop regarding mooring and docking fees. There were certain recommendations that came forward. The council instructed that there should be an ordinance at this particular meeting so that it could consider those fees. And in the first case, which is the Ordinance 2015-23, and I'm calling it with fees included version. This is the one that appears at C4. This is sort of the traditional way of amending the comprehensive schedule of fees to basically increase the fees per the discussion at the workshop. The second version, which has the same number, because we just got sick of making too many numbers, okay, is one that removes those fees and other fees existing from the comprehensive schedule of fees and indicates that the council, through resolution, will create fees at its pleasure okay, by adding things to rules and regulations. So they both basically do the same thing, except that one would require continuing with the process of amending the ordinance to change fees when you wish to change fees, and the other would just create a process that it would be changed through council resolution.
And there's also cost savings moving forward.
Well,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
Get a little more flexibility and much less expensive.
So am I correct in believing that in these two proposed methods, you're presenting the same schedule of fees?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that we found before that we'd like the council to have the option to make detailed changes to amounts and all that without having to have a new ordinance, and I think this is a classic case where that would be desirable.
So, Lou, the correct process, if we're not interested in option number one, which is C4...
You could receive and file that one.
Okay. So what is the council's pleasure on C4, which would be continuing what we currently do?
Was that the same with C5 as well? Is it just two different?
C5 would be the new method. You want to adopt that for first reading.
Right.
Yeah, I would move that we receive and file C4.
Good.
And that...
So we have a motion. We have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The only thing I would ask is if we set this out by rule and regulation, which I agree with, that we would make sure that we would still have a public hearing to discuss the fee changes, and that it would come to the council.
Well, yeah, it'd be a public hearing in the sense that it would be discussed by the council, but it wouldn't have, so it would have to be on your agenda.
Right.
And
people could give us comments.
And people could give you comments. Yes.
Just be aware
You
that
can't have a public hearing per se.
right now, even with the current process, there's no requirement for a public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so this would become part of an advertised agenda, the way that it is now. It just wouldn't require the advertising in the newspaper and the other things that go along with the
Right. I
ordinance
understand. I just want to make
process.
sure that the public has their opportunity to speak about it, and especially when it comes to fees like this that affect people's livelihoods.
And I think it has the further virtue as a practical matter that if we or the harbor master found one of these numbers was crazy and need to be changed, we could change one number by our own process without having to have a new ordinance.
Yeah.
So it makes all kinds of sense.
That's probably the best point.
So what we need now is a motion for first reading on C5.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Why are we having that public hearing then, if we just decided we don't want to do that?
What's that?
Why are we having a public hearing on C5 if we just decided we don't want to do that any longer?
You're not having a public hearing.
Oh, we're not?
At the next meeting, this will come up, and you'll vote on it as second
It's
reading.
still second reading.
Okay.
Certain things like zoning require a public hearing. Okay, the next is the item D1. This is the petition of Kerry Jacob, doing business as the Fresh Table, 423 Hope Street. Request council consideration for a vitrilling license. You'll have a recommendation from the town administrator and chief of police to approve that request.
I would move that we approve this on the basis of the recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is Ms. Jacobs here? Welcome. I'm going to give you, how about a minute or 30 seconds of a free commercial. It's a new business coming to town, and you've earned the right for an hour and a half of waiting. So,
Fantastic.
welcome.
Thank you so much. So we are hoping to open in mid-January. We're just over at 423 Hope Street. The concept behind Fresh Table is that we celebrate everything that goes down at the family table. So if you think about, dining, drinking, celebrating, I have 2 small children. I'm very late. And, homework and games and puzzles. So there will be tableware, ceramics and things like that, as well as some home goods. There will be a children's section. We're going to have a lot of American-made, locally sourced items. There's also a 10-seat cafe in the back corner. For those that are familiar with the building, they used to do tea there. So we will have pastries and coffee and tea, some jazz, so everybody can come and hang out, and some books and just all sorts of things that you would want to bring to your table and share with your family and your friends.
And if someone wanted to go there, where would they go? Where are you located?
423 Hope Street.
Which?
It's the Belvedere building.
Belvedere building right next to William Raves.
And when's your grand opening?
Mid-January.
Mid-January, okay.
Yeah, so we're going to do a soft open, and then we're going to have a hosted event for the merchants in the neighborhood and community probably in March.
Well, I wish you good luck. It sounds like a pretty neat idea.
Thank you.
We welcome you and thank you. And if there's any questions of what you have to do, please reach out to Diane regarding anything.
No,
Thank
everybody's
you.
been wonderful.
Beautiful.
Great support.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Good to hear.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
For the same petitioner, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, you have a request for holiday sales license, and you also have a recommendation provided by the Town Administrator and Chief of Police. That's item D2.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the holiday sales license for Fresh Table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good luck.
Pardon me, Mr. Chairman, did I understand that there was planned to have regular entertainment, because I don't think we had a request.
That's why I asked her to speak to Diane in regards to where we were going to discuss that.
Yeah, you can get some.
Okay, just want to make
So you can get some clarity from
I
Diane.
caught the same thing, Mr. Clerk.
Okay, the next item is the petition of Ben Luke for Bristol Buffet, 180 Mount Hope Avenue, request council consideration for a victualling license. We have the recommendations of the town administrator, chief of police, and the Department of Water Pollution Control. And we have Mr. Healy.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Luke is here with me in case anyone had any questions related to the menu that was provided, and we're hoping to see what goes as the restaurant progresses, and maybe come back to see you folks a little later if we need a little help on that liquor license issue.
What's this council's pleasure?
I would move that we approve the victualling license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Basically, is it pretty much the same setup, Mr. Luke, that was familiar with tweets, or is there any changes?
Correct. Well, what we did is we added all the buffet tables. It will be all-you-can-eat buffet type of deal. In terms of seatings-wise, it will be actually less seating compared to what Tweet Bozzano used to be.
Okay. You got another 20 seconds of a free commercial. You want to take advantage?
Well,
No?
yeah, what we're going to do is, like I said, it will be an all-you-can-eat buffet. We're not trying to promote a contest of eating, but providing an inexpensive way of people coming in to test all different type of food from all different regions. It'll be Chinese, Japanese, and the oceans, Americans, and all that. And we're planning to do like a breakfast brunch on Saturday and Sunday, starting at 9 o'clock also. So.
And when were you thinking of opening?
We are shooting at January 15th or so.
January 15th?
January 15th.
And for those of you who don't know, this is the old tweets on...
At 180 Mount Hope Avenue.
Thank you, 180 Mount Hope Avenue. So we have a motion and a second.
I just wanted to say, and I'm going to refer this to you because I don't think the chief is here, but I got the water pollution control, but the fire chief signed off on this also, right?
I did not get a recommendation on that one.
Okay.
But I
don't have a problem. Yeah, I don't have a problem as long as we do the follow-up.
There was a request.
That's why I was just asking for the layout
I'm working
of all
with
the concerns.
all those departments right now to get all
exactly.
the approvals.
Do we need to make any special adjustments to this motion, or would it be just standard issue as we normally would?
We always make it subject to the conformance to all laws, which I doubt very much if there would be anything that would be coming forward that was not because of law compliance.
Agreed. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Closing times are good. Thank you. Good luck with you.
Good luck.
Before we move forward, maybe we could combine all of these together. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to combine E1, E2, E3, and E4.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, you have the various licenses relating to Dirty Water Pub, 198 Thames Street. You have recommendations from the town administrator and chief of police. That all seems to be in order, and they recommend that they be extended to the full term.
This would be the part of the show that I would say to the chief, but the chief's not here. And could you speak? Is there anything that you want to add to this? Any concerns or questions? No.
A couple of small minor things that happened during the opening.
Can you grab that mic so we can hear you? Sorry. Thank you, sir.
No, just a couple of small things that happened. Rough opening, the valet park and messed up traffic a little bit. Which I one disorderly person down there. The people inside the establishment basically called us, which we want them to do, and let us deal with it.
Okay.
And it worked out well. So it was only that one incident, and then the opening night, the confusion. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So that resurrected again. We were discussing that in the
Welcome.
town
I
of
didn't even see
Bristol
it, sorry.
valet parking. So it's just interesting to hear that someone was trying to do that again. So it kind of got lost with the merchants that were downtown that we tried to have discussions about that. So
I've talked to some local residents around the area, and they said you guys have been great.
Thank you.
So,
anything else?
Is there anything you would like
Did you
to
want to
add
add anything?
No, everything's been great so far.
We can give you a 20-second commercial if you want to.
Your commercial on Metacom is very good. You hit both sides, north and south.
That and the Pandora ad on Pandora Radio. Everybody's been talking about it. Everything's been going great so far, and just like to try to, extend anything going forward. So I think.
We spent a lot of time, and you got that knowing smile on your face from the last time that you were here, and this makes us all very happy that we can tell you that we've heard good news back. I don't know what this council's pleasure is yet, but it's nice to hear that it went the way that you were hoping and that we were hoping. So thank you.
I visited your establishment. Very professional, clean. Your work is very professional. Again, we thank you, and we thank you for your accommodation of being a good neighbor on the probation here in town. And with that, I move with these combined items, if we can grant the renewal of the intoxicating beverage license, the Victorine license, the entertainment license, and the amusement device license, and this is contingent upon all the recommendations and approvals of our departments and all state laws and ordinances that pertain to your establishment.
Yeah, we just want to clarify that.
I'll second the motion.
Go ahead.
We just want to clarify that moving forward with no past incidences, that we would be able to have entertainment 7 days a week.
So you did ask the question. So I believe this council, and we have to answer that if it was a proposal, not Sundays. But I think he's questioning from the last time he was here, the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you're looking for more hours or more days pertaining to that license.
Correct. For entertainment purposes. We've had a lot of inquiries in the last few weeks for having holiday parties during the week. We would like to have acoustic, maybe playing around having an acoustic act, after work. But with the restrictions the last 60 days, it really limited it to us, with planning and hosting these events.
Mm-hmm. Now, Michael, do we take that under the renewal process of the applicant here, or does
entertainment license?
Okay. So with that said, what are you asking the council? You already have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So what are you asking of what you want?
Sunday, right?
No, you can't.
No, you can't do Sunday. Monday,
you can't have Sunday.
Monday through Saturday.
Yeah, Monday through Saturday.
Monday through Wednesday.
In addition to the Thursday,
Friday, and Saturday.
Okay.
Okay.
Which was the case before we took over. But I think with the probation, we got Thursday.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
John Ferrer, John Ferrer.
Thank you.
Well, I would move that we go ahead and grant them Monday through Saturday. But again, and this is not picking on you because we're adding that, I'm sure it's not going to be a problem just to have a report back from the police in 60 days with those additional hours, just to be safe. But I'm more than willing to abide by that on the entertainment license.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
Then, don't we? You're going to vote on them together?
Well, it was actually just changed, as the applicant actually pointed out, that it was the application in front of us wasn't necessarily what they were looking for hours. Right. So this adjustment is, we can just...
Then I think it technically would be an amendment to the original motion.
The amendment to the section of the motion for the renewal of the entertainment license, and only the entertainment license.
Okay, so there it is, and there was a second. Is there any other discussion?
Was there just any definition on hours or anything like that, or is it the same hours for those days as the other days?
Can you speak to us about, I don't know if you can or not, is there, or maybe Lou, you could actually do this, is there, what's our past practice? I know that not necessarily with this establishment, but just to kind of reiterate to this council those
When
other days?
the council grants the license, it typically sets the hours. So,
But I was asking for what have we done with other establishments. I don't want to hamstring. I also don't want to.
We don't do 2 a.m. though. They were asking Thursday through Saturday till 2 a.m. We don't do.
No, that was
2 a.m.
And we took that away by ordinance.
They took that away, right? It's still on the petition.
Anymore.
Yeah.
Still on the older one. Yeah.
You can't do that anymore.
That's the old one. But, yeah.
Well, just for clarification, I believe their hours are set forth, that's what we're approving. We're just, they have the ample opportunity Monday through Wednesday now to have entertainment at night like they want, or are we talking about, we're questioning, are you going to have entertainment 1 in the afternoon versus 9, or you're only allowed entertainment from when you open to X amount, or 9 to 1? What are we talking here?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking here.
Well, I think the previous establishment, I mean, like it or not, they had it pretty much every day, anytime they wanted, right? And then if you wanted it during the afternoon, which is unlikely, it was mostly on the evenings, and then I believe there were special requests that came in for weekends, like for Sundays, in the summer when there was a special fundraising event or whatever the case may be.
I just thought that when we give entertainment license, they already stipulate their hours of business, and when we grant entertainment licenses, we just do the days. I didn't know that we specified hours for just the entertainment.
We don't, yeah, I don't think we do.
So that's why I'm questioning, what are we actually talking about?
Lou, can you answer that?
Well, I think we'll just have to look at the, is it included in here? I'm not sure exactly if we have all the back information.
I think the specific question is that in the past, have we stipulated hours for entertainment at other establishments, not necessarily just this one?
I don't think that we have, because you close at 1, and you have last call, like whatever the time is, right? I don't know what time that is. 12, whatever it is. I mean, when is usually in the entertainment? Somewhere like around 12:30?
Correct. Yep.
And I'm not questioning it. If that's what we have to do going forward with entertainment, that's fine.
Right.
You know?
So they're asking for 11 through 1 a.m. Drop Sunday, make it Monday through Wednesday. They're asking for 11 to 1, and Thursday through Saturday, 11 to 2. So I think that
2 is not.
I understand that 2 is not allowed. I'm just telling you what's in front of you. So it is important when you make this motion that you specify, because you're not granting 11 to 2.
And the 11 to 2 was what nights?
Thursday through Saturday.
Okay, my amendment was just the additional entertainment through Monday through Wednesday adding. And wouldn't the old renewal stipulate when we took that vote to 1 o'clock, or no, just specify it again?
I don't know what the old...
It doesn't have anything
Okay,
on here.
It was never 11 to 2.
Yeah, it is.
No, we know that. It's just I'll amend the motion that Monday through Saturday, you're allowed the entertainment license and your hours being 11 to 1 a.m.
That would be consistent.
Because this is the August thing that's
So that's the
attached.
amended
That's the only time it's in.
motion. Is there a second to that amended motion?
Second.
So there's now a second. Is there any other discussion or a question?
Yeah, I'd like to make the suggestion that we pass the basic ordinance as we were originally going to do, but that we make the amendment to it under Robert's rules on a probationary basis, where we review it in 3 months.
I said 60 days.
That's why we're here today. It was the 60-day
60 days even better.
No, he's saying 60 days from now. Let's do it and then review it in 60 days.
That was my motion.
That's the original.
Okay, well, that's fine.
So there's a motion and a second. Are you clear on those? So okay, all right.
I wish I was. Okay, we're just basically, we're adding the 3 days.
Correct.
Okay, with the same, so it's basically, according to what I see in here, that they can have entertainment during the hours that they're open.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
That was the motion.
All right. And that you're going to have a review after 60 days.
Yep.
Of the entertainment part
Of the entertainment one
Yes.
only.
Got
All
it.
right.
Perfect.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
You too. Merry Christmas.
Okay. Let's see. The next petition is the next item, is the petition of Margaret McLaughlin of 8 Leela Jean Drive, requests council consideration for no parking area in the vicinity of her residence. I'm informed through the administrator's office that the police department would like a little bit more time in order to review this more thoroughly, and we have discussed it with the petitioner, and she has no problem with an extension in order to provide the police with the opportunity to complete their work.
I move to continue this to December 16th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the next is the petition of Francisco Souza, 77 Union Street, requests council consideration for removal of an accessible parking space. This would be the first reading. You have a recommendation of the town administrator and chief of police.
Move the favorable first reading, which is very nice to have somebody come forward and eliminate one of these, because we mostly only have requests to put them in.
That's true. Yeah. I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. I always say this at these two, is that thank you. Thank you for sharing it. When you need one, we're here to help you. And when you don't need it anymore, then thank you for sharing that. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the request of Glenn Conway, 24 Court Street, would like a no parking area across from his driveway. You have the recommendation of the town administrator and chief of police to approve. If the council was so interested in doing this, then it must go to the solicitor for an ordinance.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm Glenn. I live across the street.
Hello, neighbor.
Hi, how are you?
I see what goes on, right, all those late times that people are talking in front of your house when they get out of here,
No
right?
problem, I enjoy it. I got a beautiful porch to get a great view. Yeah, I'm just looking to get a parking space so I can get in and out of my driveway. Currently, when there's cars parked too far forward, it's very difficult to get in and out without going on the sidewalk. I'm not looking for a full spot at the width of my driveway. I'm looking at for about 8 feet. It's like the corner of the building to the white crosswalk that you guys go to the parking lot. It's about 8 feet at the most. Yeah.
Chief gave us a nice picture of that. So,
yeah, there you go. Yeah. So it's not very much, and that'll allow us to pull forward and back into the driveway, because backing out of that driveway is very treacherous. I get.
Well, I have
Yeah,
to say
whatever.
that
Difficult.
every parking space is a premium in the front here, but I have to say, when I have parked by your driveway, I go like, how do they ever get in and out of there? So I think we've all thought that.
And I'm the owner, and I'm the resident there, so it's me that's living there.
So, Mike, the motion is Lou, the motion is referred to the solicitor? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, for an ordinance.
Okay.
So do I want to make a motion to approve it first and then refer it to you?
Sure, approve it.
So I'll make a motion to approve the parking spot upon the recommendations and refer the draft ordinance to be referred to the solicitor.
I think it's better just to refer it, because you can't, I don't want it to be misunderstood that it's there, that it's done.
Okay.
Because you have the ordinance process. If there's 20 people come in, they want a public hearing,
Fair enough.
you can't tell them already
Fair
you
enough.
approved it.
True. All right.
Okay, so let's just say it's going to be referred.
So I will amend by just saying referring it to the solicitor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have one request on the same to Tony and to the police department. In front of the Historical Society, that's a pretty long no parking area. I know one of the reasons, I'm sure, is to get out of the driveway, but I'm wondering if we could pick in the parking lot. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a way to pick up a space either right in the middle of the building, so there's like maybe 4 or 5 feet on each side, or just up further, like near the other entrance, because people are mostly, it's a one-way street, so you can't really come, that's not going to be an issue, and be able to pick up maybe one space there to make up, if you could check on that.
I see the delivery trucks going to, I guess, Oyster Bar and whatever else. When they pull out of there, they they need
Use every
take
inch?
a big
Oh, they do
wide
the whole thing?
space to
Yeah.
get through those parking spots, but
But could they go out?
I don't know if they need two of them, but I mean,
Yeah.
they use a lot of it.
But couldn't they go out the other,
Then they
s-
wouldn't be able to make that turn.
Oh, they
that
wouldn't?
tight there.
Oh.
I don't think they would anyway.
Oh, I don't know.
They
Well-
would run into the vehicles parked on the upper side towards the fence if they were to
Oh.
cut across.
Well, maybe you can check into it anyway.
So we have a motion to refer to the solicitor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So where do I go next?
Back here.
In a
'cause
month?
Well, you don't have to get, the next step on this.
Oh, it's just a reading.
Is a first reading, and then there'll be a second reading, in which we'll pass it if we see fit to pass it. So far, it seems like it's a
Great, thank you.
And you may
Green
want to
light.
walk across the street 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, walk right across the street. There you go.
I
Good point,
can't right now. I
Halsey.
got a phone pole burning over.
Thank you.
I look forward to the tree lighting. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The next item is under your public service appointment section. You have the planning board where a long-term member, Kenneth Marshall, has resigned, and you have a request of Michael Rossi, who currently serves as the alternate member, requesting to fill the appointment.
A couple things. Kenneth J. Marshall, so we'll call him affectionately Big Kenny Marshall. He actually calls himself that, so we can differentiate between the two. Was a longtime member of the planning board, a valuable member of the planning board, a member of the town council.
Used to be council chairman.
Yeah,
Right.
council chairman, and someone that the reason why he's resigning is he's 6 months and 1 day down in Florida now.
Wow.
So I think I
Well,
don't
we
feel bad for
certainly ought
him at
to
all,
send
to be quite
him
honest.
a very good letter of thanks, and maybe in that, Lou, you could recall all of his other positions.
Sure.
And then number two is Mike and I actually used to serve together on the planning board as alternates. So Mike's been on the planning board for a long time and valued 6 years, as I've been given the thumbs, on the planning board. Has done a great job, and it was a pleasure serving next to you. So
I'd like to be happy to elevate you, Michael, for your time to a full-time member on the planning board with the term to expire as specified.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So now we need to advertise for another auxiliary member, don't we?
That's right. We do. Good point.
Thank you for being so patient. We're going to say that to everybody who's up in front after you. So.
The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, you have the matter continued from October 21st. This was Mr. Herisoff's request for a list of pending issues, specifically regarding the streetlights on Monkey Wrench Lane.
Yes.
We missed one.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was hiding down there.
Hiding.
The Tri-Town collaboration, I'm afraid I wasn't at that meeting, but apparently there was some discussion about council member representatives, and that each town of the three were going to provide two, and this apparently is your opportunity to select who those two would be.
So, point of clarity on that one is that there are two members of each council's chair/president, and then one council person from there. And the idea behind this collaborative is to hopefully work a little bit more closely with our neighbors to help our legislators understand what we're looking for and speak with hopefully a louder voice. So when we're looking for changes, increases, obviously we're always looking for more money, right? So allow us to speak with a larger voice. So I would like to be on this, and am, because I'm the chair, and Ed, my colleague and everyone's colleague, is the liaison to the state. So am I, and I thought it was appropriate that Ed be that person. But we need a motion to that effect, if everyone is amenable.
So moved.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, back to Monkey Wrench Lane.
Welcome back.
Okay. I'd like to ask the town administrator about that. He and I have discussed it many times. You know, Monkey Wrench Lane is what you might call a black hole now, and this would affect a lot of residents, and also it would be very important, I think, to the Sisters of St. Dorothy to have some illumination when they come out of their driveway and so forth, for safety and for avoiding accidents and convenience.
Agree totally with you. In fact, I enlisted a couple other people to walk through with me. Ed Tanner, who's actually, didn't realize he's been the tree specialist, the lighting specialist for the town. I didn't realize that. Diane used to do it before. But anyway, we took a walk through, and we do agree that a light should be installed, or we recommend that a light be installed by Sisters of St. Dorothy. Actually, there's two other lights. If you go to the other side going towards the water, you come across, and there's actually two other lights that were installed there previously.
There's a dangerous point where the road turns down near the bottom there, and I think if we could illuminate both at the Sisters and at that dangerous corner at the bottom, it would be very desirable.
But that was going to be where the curve was.
No, actually, just around the curve, there's a light there. There is one there, so you would skip and then have one by Sisters of St. Dorothy.
Well, now, you planning to add one or add two?
Add one. That's the recommendation, because we got to keep in mind that right now, in fact, National Grid, the engineer, was supposed to have stopped sometime this week. I haven't received anything back yet from Jocks, but I will reach out again to find out what the status is. What is the light that would be recommended? What type of fixture would be recommended for the area?
If you're agreeable, I'd like to drive down there one evening with you and have a look, because I think that that light beyond the corner at the bottom isn't very effective in lighting the corner for safety. Could you and I drive down there some evening and have a look at it?
Certainly. I'll be more than glad. Just let me know what night, and we'll have a date.
So, Mike, do we need a motion to drive down to Monkey Wrench Lane? Is that no?
Drive down right after this. It'd be like when Big Kenny was chairperson, and people would come in at midnight and say, "The dump smells. Now's the time to go smell it." You know, they used to come in here at like midnight. Remember that?
Well, Mary, you know that I'm always inclined towards practicality, but even though you might not always agree with me, I like to find things out.
So what's your pleasure on this agenda item, also?
Well, I would suggest that we continue it to December 16th, and that we study it. Maybe I'll come in to see it tomorrow. Maybe we go down after sunset tomorrow and have a look at it.
Second. And we won't tell any stories. So motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Now, I have a number of other items in this matter, but I could take those up a little further into the meeting to save time.
Spectacular.
Maybe on my prerogative.
The next item is from the town administrator regarding the Bristol Emergency Dialer Program donation.
What? We saw that in the paper?
Yes, you did. So it's basically, initially, it came directly to me, so I just want to be sure that you had full privilege of seeing that as well.
Thank you.
I mean, as we know, the program has been very effective. It assists many of our residents, and in some instance, we just never know when it's a lifesaver, But I can bet you that I know my mother-in-law uses one, and she swears by it, even though we've told her to be cautious when she leans against the counter, because she's knocked off a couple times, and they go, anything wrong? She says, I don't know. So, anyway, but it certainly has been very useful, and we're very appreciative to the Rotary Club for all their efforts and contributions.
Nice. So we need a motion to
referring to file.
Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we were referring to the Bristol Emergency Dialer Donation Program, and we as a council every year are very proud and happy to support this program.
Well put. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, I2, this is the business plan update provided by Explore Bristol.
So as everyone recalls, we had requested this as part of budget approvals on this item after the discussions that we had, and that's why it's in front of us this evening. So what questions do we have for Mike? Welcome, Mike, again.
Mike Burns, Bristol.
Well, I'd like to ask one question. We appreciate your presenting this budget, but in regard to the last page, there was resentment in the past when your organization sent bills to restaurants without any promotion or consultation, and I would caution you that you may wish to meet with them and try to persuade them to provide this money and not just send them a bill.
Good point, Halsey. We are doing that. Jeff Hirsch is leading that effort. He's been out and talked to all the major venues, and they're on board. And in the coming weeks, he's going to be talking to all the restaurants and watering holes in town, the pubs. So we're doing it that way. All the other merchants will be handled by BMA, so they will be dealing individually with merchants that are not restaurants, major venues, or pubs.
So, Mike, just tell me a little bit. So you're going to meet with the restaurant, and you're hoping, it looks like you're 10 large restaurants at $500.
Right.
So say they come back to you and they say, listen, we can't do the 500, we're going to do 200, 300. Are you going to be...
Actually, in the past, Tim, a number of restaurants have done 1,000.
Okay.
So we're kind of averaging it out. But Jeff, who knows that group of people very well in town, will meet with them and talk to them. If they can't do 500, we'll make some other arrangements with them, as we always do.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Now, I notice there's a blank besides miscellaneous expenditures and advertising. What might fill that blank?
I think there's not a blank, Halsey. It continues on to that other line where it says rack cards, stickers, ads, checks. So there's kind of a number of things in that particular line.
All right, so that's all taken into account?
Right.
Now, are you still owing that debt that we worried about a year ago?
Yeah. Let me give you a rundown on where we are financially. We've got about $5,400 in the bank account right now. We've got another $4,000 incoming from the major venues, from two of them, and then the $5,000 that we expect to get from the restaurants that Jeff will be going out to hit. And whatever we get from BMA, how that works, we're still not quite certain. That will be added to our revenues. We owed, if you remember from our last meeting, $22,000 in arrears to Lou Hammond. We paid that down to 19. We're ready to pay that down to 14. Probably as soon as I get the next check from the major venues.
Well, now that you have a lot of leverage, can you talk them into forgiving some of that?
We talked them into forgiving quite a bit, and as you remember, we talked them into a different structure of billing, so that actually we cut our, not that we have a formal contract, but we cut our fees in half. And actually the way they work is during the slow period of the year, we pay about $1,000 a month, roughly. During the high season, May through September, we pay roughly about $5,000 a month. So we've sort of, in addition to knocking it in half from $66,000 to $33,000, we also have a different payment schedule now.
But that's your largest expenditure by far.
It's by far our largest expenditure, yes, still. But, and I think Jeff or Lou Hammond sent the council all the different articles that were published just in this last summer. And it was a stack yay big, and some very, we were in, earlier in the Yankee magazine, Good Housekeeping, which has a tremendous reach, AAA Horizons magazine, which is really sort of directed to the travelers that we're looking at. So not only did we get a great quantity of coverage, we got some real good quality of coverage also. So, you know, this is, as I said before, we're promoting the town of Bristol. We're not promoting ourselves. And it's a decision that the town, you know, needs to work in partnership with us if that's the council's decision. Do we promote the town in this way? And is there benefit to promoting the town in this way? We think there is. We know that the major venues especially are very high on it, and they pay a fee of $2,000 a year. So they're very much on board with what this does for them and what this does for the town. We're not marketing individual businesses, we're marketing the town. We're positioning Bristol as a destination.
Can you talk to us about the BMA list? You have down here that we will split BMA income and taking a conservative approach.
Yeah.
We believe that BMA can list 70 to 80 business, and which our share would be $7,000 to $8,000. Where are we with that?
Yeah, that's. I think when I talked to the council previously, we had two major shortfalls. One was Roger Williams. They froze their tuition and froze us out from the stipend they were giving us very generously. And we didn't get what we needed from BMA because of internal issues with BMA. I think we all know there was a leadership gap where Elaine White took over, and then she had some personal issues she had to deal with. Lynn Shaw took over and got a great job with Coca-Cola, and she's running around all of New England. And so BMA is a question mark. And in the budget itself, I've got very little revenue coming in. I talked about the potential from BMA, and it's there. But we won't make that happen until sort of BMA gets back on its feet.
So
BMA had a very good meeting 2 weeks ago down at the DeWolf Tavern. There's a lot more interest, but it's going to just take people getting out on the street and getting it back up and running.
So your numbers for revenues do not include those 70 to 80?
I'm not banking on that at all, Nathan.
Where do I see that? I guess what I see. Where do I see that on the first sheet? Where do I see what you are actually figuring into it?
On revenues?
Yes.
Well, it's the town of Bristol, fees, grants, and others. And at that time, when I did this initially, it was cash in bank, which is now about $5,000. So when we look at major venues, when we look at the restaurants, we look at grants, legislative grants that we get, because we get several legislative grants. And occasionally we'll have somebody like the medical center will give us a grant. So we get funds other than from the major venues, but not very much. Really, our budget is about $42,600 for a year. If we get that much, and $30,000 comes from the town, so we're talking about $12,600.
So in that 12.6, is that, how much did you figure of those 70 to 80 vendors, I guess is what I'm asking?
I'm sorry, how much?
No problem. So you show on here for member fees, website fees, grants, and other of $12,660 is revenue. In that 12,000, we'll just say 12.6 for easy math, how much of that was figured in as BMA member fees?
I didn't, actually in this budget on the first page, I didn't figure any of that in.
But how much
so
are
that's
you...
major venues, that's restaurants, and that's grants that we get from other places.
Would you, if you would, in the next, because we're going to do, we just said we would do this quarterly, so it's another few months. On the next one, could you give us a breakdown of that member fees and just in that 12,660, just show a breakdown of that so we can see that? So, Mary?
Well, I can kind of, at least off the top of my head, we've got 4 major venues that pay $2,000 each, so that's $8,000. With the 10 restaurants, and I don't think that will be a problem at all. We're talking at an average of 500 a restaurant, so that's another 5,000. 5 and 8 right away, we're over the 12.6 that we need to make this budget work. Now, we hope to continue to work with BMA to get that back on track so that we get money from their memberships, because what our original agreement was is that we would get half of the BMA membership from all those BMA members that join. That's a $200 fee, so we get $100 for that. If they get 600, if they get 60 or 70, you can do the math is very transparent. That would be, and any excess would be what we use to pay off Lou Hammond our arrears.
On kind of a related question on that, and I don't want to take you guys off topic here, but at budget time, we had talked about a 501c3. How are you making out with that?
I'm on the Tinker committee, the steering committee. We applied for a 501c3, which is about 8 pages and about 6 hours of a CPA's time. We got a huge letter back from the IRS requesting all sorts of demographic information, who do we serve, what's their medium income, low income. Absolutely incredible, 10 pages. We operate right now under Mosaico as our 501c3 umbrella. And that's the way we've operated since we started. It doesn't pose any problems for us for fundraising. It doesn't pose any problems for us in any way whatsoever, and we don't have to go through the whole sort of bureaucratic process of getting a 501c3. I'm not sure Tinker's going to get their 501c3. Part of the problem is that economic development is not one of the reasons that you get a 501c3. It's charity.
Well, it sounds to me like you're doing fine using Mosaicos. I don't see any reason to change that.
We are. It's a little bit of work for Diane. We
don't mind giving you some work.
But it's fine. It's very minimal because all she does is to reconcile the bank books. So I bring her all the invoices and all the receipts, and she just balances that against the bank book once a month. It probably takes her an hour at the most.
Mike, I was just wondering if you could include in your next quarterly update the plan on the debt.
Yes.
That would be great. I'm happy to see that that's coming down and you have a game plan, and we didn't want tax dollars to be used for it, and you haven't done that, which is great, and looks like you have a plan to get that. If you could just include that, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, I will.
Appreciate it.
Just one further question, if I might. Is there any chance that fabulous, wonderful car show to be repeated in June could prosper to the point where they could provide your organization a little profit?
Yeah, actually, we did get money from the car show, Halsey. We ran the parking at the Town Beach, actually with Walter and the rec department, and we probably made about $1,800 from that particular activity. Hopefully this year, if the car show is, we bring in as many people as we hope, we'll do quite a bit better.
Include that in your report.
So we do use that as a fundraiser.
Yeah. Include that in your report. That'd be great.
Yep.
That's good stuff.
Okay.
Can I just ask you what is your plan for the future for Lou Hammond? I mean, you're going to pay down, the debt, and then you have her in, still going on. So is it your vision that you would be able to? Your plan is to keep her under the new payment system into the next year, or?
I think it's in the interest of the town to do that.
I mean, I'm talking about the next year.
That's my opinion.
July 1st, I'm talking about. Yeah. The fiscal year.
I could move to Florida and do something else, to be honest with you. But, I think we should keep it going, Mary, to answer the question. I think it's of benefit to the town. I think a lot of things that happen to the town, you can't really point to it and say, it was a result of Explore Bristol or the buzz that's created. But if you go upstate and you talk to the director of Rhode Island Tourism, and you talk to the people in the Providence Convention Center, they're all saying, it used to be Wickford, but now it's Bristol. That's where the buzz is. And I see Diane shaking her head. She probably hears the same thing. And Bristol continues to get these accolades as sort of the romantic getaway of New England, and a lot of different things that have happened in the recent past. We get journalists now coming into Bristol doing stories on Bristol that nobody pushed. In other words, they heard about Bristol and they said, gee, we should go there. Twice now, the boating industry, it's too bad that Jim Dollins left because he's been a big part of that. Twice now, the boating industry has come in and done great articles on Bristol, as a by-sea destination. And so I do think it's making a difference. Now, I'm biased. I have to admit that right up front, but for sure, Walter says.
First off, we thank you, Mike, for the many years of your service, and we have shared in the partnership. Julie, were you supported the same supplemental document from Explore Bristol that we received in front of us? And the reason why I'm asking that, and I believe my colleagues will remember that on the last meeting with Explore Bristol, when we were to do these quarterly reports, this council was facing multiple issues and major concerns in the future from our auditing firm. And this is why we're trying to guide you. We're not being negative, Michael, when we question things, but the thoroughness of the mirror image of ending in, June of 2015, what's before us tonight, I think we need more in detail. I know Councilman Sweeney questioned a couple items, and the reason being is we're being told by our auditing firms, because ongoing with a lot of red flags we're contentiously dealing with, this is why we ask these questions, and it's not because we don't afford your efforts. We just need, and we also want to support you by guiding your numbers to have it documented, so when you come before us, because I don't know if you know this, February and March is right around the corner. So when we're dealing with these numbers now, I guess we don't want to be surprised, as Councilman Calero said, as the words of expect or focus on the real hard numbers of what your organization is really dealing with for survival in tandem partnership with the town and its residents supporting this initiative. So.
Can I just make one other quick comment? I mean, I know that it's easier to stay with your fiscal agent, but I still think that it would be to your benefit to be your own 501c3. I know that that's difficult, but I think for many reasons it would be, I think, a worthwhile effort.
I don't know if we'd be approved, Mary, is the thing that I'm concerned about now. After looking at the Tinker process and the IRA response back, I bet the response back to the IRA is probably 11 pages long.
Have you looked at...
And they've got to convince them that they're not into economic development, which Tinker ought to be into economic development to some extent.
Yeah, well, is it possible to look at, the Chamber's a 501c3, are they not? The Chamber of Commerce, are they a 501c3?
I don't know, but the Chamber, Mosaico is a good fit for us because they were community development, and it's worked well so far. It really hasn't hindered us in any way being under their umbrella.
I think Councilman, I think Mary and Ed have said it very well, is that what you're here, I don't think it's hindered you, but I think we're kind of nudging you in the way that it's hindering us. And it's important that you're looking at other avenues. And there is, I don't profess to know the inner workings of each and every, but there's 501c3s, and then there's, there's a whole bunch that go in that. So there may be something that's closer to your needs, and honestly, for the town's needs too, because there's an important thing. I think what we're talking about here is that we're on a few years of supporting this initiative, and we need to. This is good information, but it needs to be in, we'll call it in a Julie file, you know what I mean? So it's broken down in a way that our auditors can look at it and say, this is fine. You can go ahead and move forward on that. So
I'd be happy if Julie wants to give me a template to use that to go by.
You're welcome, Julie.
Well, I just think you might want to explore other options. I mean, perhaps the just in case you need them, like if the chamber is a 501c3 or even that, and they're doing similar kind of work, then you could use much of the information that they could help. They could provide you with some of the information for the 501c3, and or as another alternative as a fiscal agent, if they would be willing to serve in that capacity and not charge any money.
Yeah, essentially that's what Mosaico is doing. In other words, the bank account is on their name.
Right.
Actually, when we get checks in from donations or from the major venues, for example, the checks technically should be made out to Mosaico with Explore Bristol on the memo line.
Right, we understand. We just are making that suggestion to you for various reasons.
Strongly.
That I don't know about that. She might be able to answer that.
Just to summarize, it seems to me that I think our expenses are pretty clear, pretty transparent. They're not terribly complicated. It's the income that needs to be broken down a little bit better. And I'd be happy to work with Julie. And
Julie, would you?
Just before, this is on. Before we leave this topic tonight.
Is that on, Mike?
It doesn't seem like it.
It is.
Okay. Before we leave the topic topic tonight. I think it's important that we, I think Mike's looking for a vote for the release of the other half of the funds, so I don't want to lose sight of that. This discussion could probably continue during the budget. The council's already voted to appropriate for Bristol $30,000, so I think that part of the issue is kind of decided for this year, but we should probably continue the discussion during budget time.
And if I may-
think for tonight,
Go ahead.
we need a vote for the release of the $15,000.
To remind everybody, what we had done was we approved that, and in working with Julie, we split up the funds because we wanted quarterly reports, and we felt that was the best way to get those quarterly reports, to talk with Mike, to get the information, make sure things are where we were hoping they would be. So.
And I'm not picking on you, Mike, but that's what I mean about, so we release you 15,000.
Yeah.
I would expect that would be now, because the numbers that, I don't know if you kind of like included that because of the outline. That was my point. You know what I mean?
I did include that.
As a whole.
Yeah.
But if we did quarterly reports, cash on hand, you wouldn't be doing that normally.
So you would like to see a financial statement from them?
You know what I'm trying to say? You just don't assume, well, they're going to get the 15,000. That's what we're seeing, and it should be clear of what's cash on hand, what's going out, what's coming in at the periodic time. That's all. So he has 30,000. He still doesn't have the other 15, so how can it be 30?
Well, it's in his budget of how he's going to get income,
Well,
because it's
you
been
know what I'm
voted
trying
on.
to say.
Yeah, no, I do, but it might be both, because he's got, what is his income that's projected.
So let's do this.
After all these questions, he is going to explore the option of going with Kenny to Florida, I think.
So let's do this. We need to make a vote on whether or not we want to release the second portion. But I think, Mike, you've heard, Mike and Julie, you've heard the questions that came out. So if we could get some more clarity and address the questions that have been presented, that would be most helpful for us. And then also, since we're all here right now, we need to set up another time 3 months out, quarterly, to sit and speak again. And we're beginning of December, beginning of January, beginning of February would be an appropriate time. And so first meeting in February to sit and go through this again, would that be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last one before budget.
Right. Okay. So let's plan on all of us being together again in that point. Hopefully at an earlier hour. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to direct the treasurer and to disperse and release the funds that were appropriated and approved by this council to go to Explore Bristol, and also to have another review meeting of a financial report, the first meeting in February of 2016.
Second.
So you have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm off to have a medical bourbon.
That was not lost on us.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is a request for executive session regarding the possible acquisition of open space. I'm assuming the council will want to take that up at the conclusion of the public agenda.
Yes, sir.
The next item, item I-4, also from the Director of Community Development and the Principal Planner, the status of the wayfinding signage program, Phase 1.
Diane, give us some good news here.
Ed is here tonight. You can jump in anytime.
Ed, give us some good news here. Come on up.
We are currently in the process of negotiating with the 3 lowest bidders who provided bids to the town on the Phase 1 wayfinding sign. We are closing in.
What was the budget and what's the bid?
Oh, I'm going to look to Ed for that number.
Thousands different.
The bids were a range of, I would say, around 100,000.
Yeah, when the bids were opened here a few weeks back, the council had some questions and concerns, and the bids included both the fabrication of the signs and the installation.
Well, I thought the budget was 30,000.
Wasn't it like 14, 15, and we got like $100,000
2 years combined.
bid?
My understanding is we had about $70,000 in total that we were using for Phase 1.
Well, Julie, could you get us that exact number so we understand it?
Yes, this money is coming out of our recent bond that was issued where we're using it for multiple projects. So potentially, the council could approve more than that. Initially, the money that we were using was from our 5-year capital plan, and that's why you're remembering it being a lower number. Initially, we thought $20,000, $30,000, and after we've explored it a little bit more, the prices were increasing. So the latest estimation internally that we were comfortable working with was $70,000. If Ed and Diane bring us back something and we think that up against all of our other capital projects is valuable enough.
Well, with all respect, that sounds kind of mushy to me. What I want to know is exactly what is this council authorized for that purpose?
The council did not authorize a specific dollar amount for that purpose.
Well, then how do we decide how much this council is going to allow to be spent on it?
It would be part of our grander capital project discussion, and really
What
up
I'd
to...
like to suggest and request, subject to the other councilors, that nothing happen on this until this council has authorized a dollar amount to be expended. We got to know what's going on around here.
And I think Ed and Diane, I don't know if you guys have that tonight, but that could certainly, if you know what you're looking to approve, then maybe we can discuss that tonight. If not, we can...
If you can't, and if it's beige at this point, to use a term, is it more appropriate for us to continue this to the 16th? And then you could speak...
Absolutely. KMA Design, who was the consultant that helped us with the design of the signs and the layout and the mapping of where the signs will go, we received our bids. We went back to the 3 lowest bidders. I spoke with the solicitor about how we could approach to ask for them to modify their bids. We changed the spec a little bit. We're trying to get that price down, trying to get them to sharpen their pencils, and broke out the fabrication from the installation. Our thought being, if we can get the signs made, we can get them delivered, we'll get them in the ground. Whether it's with a local contractor, whether it's partially with town resources, we'll get them in the ground.
Well, the last time we discussed this, following the receipt of the bids at the council table, the plan was to reduce the scope. In other words, your project has a number of items, A, B, C, D, and E, and you've got to cut 1 or 2 of them out and do the other ones first class. And I don't want us to spend over $100,000 on this. I think it's too much.
I do too.
We don't either, Haldy. That's why we're negotiating with the vendors, and we were a little disappointed too because it's delaying us. We were ready to, go forward with the project. So I think we're trying to, as Ed described, we're trying to look at a way to scope it so that the budget comes down as low as we can go, and we still are really excited about doing this and getting, as you say, first-class signs, and we're trying to hit all the signs that are on the priority list.
Well, I know you're all trying to do the best you can, and it's a good idea, but would you please, in December 16th, give us a nice little spreadsheet of what you've negotiated and how some reduction might be possible by cutting an element, and then the council should be asked to authorize it specifically.
So, Ed, you said the design changed a little bit. Could you include in the 16th just what that design changed and what that sign, the sign looks like? That'd be great.
Absolutely.
I know we looked at it a couple years ago.
I'll have details for you on this.
Thank you.
Because we should have all our numbers back from the contractors, the fabricators, and we can decide whether you want to go forward or not.
So I think it was a good discussion. We all agree, and I think we should continue to December 16th.
Is there a second? I ask again, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Just one piece of discussion. Julie, all of this council is under the same understanding that it was in the 20 to 30 zone that we spoke of. Could you reference back to that number? Because I think it was part of either was, as you mentioned, the capital conversation, but I know it was much, much lower than what the bids came back at. Could you bring that to our attention at the next meeting? Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Next item is from Councilman Harrisoff regarding the condition of streetscapes at Hopewood and Thames Streets.
Yes, well, when I, at council desk here, made a request of 6 or 8 items in October, one of them was a request for more utilization of the streetscaper if possible. And I've continued to urge that in as friendly and cooperative a way as I can. But it's also fallen on deaf ears. Now, go down tomorrow and look at Hope Street, right around here. It's disgraceful. There's dead leaves all over the street, which in a rainstorm become like a marsh, wet your feet, and in dry weather, they're like a freaking mat there. This is the best town in Rhode Island. we need to be sure that we do the little things that keep our pride up. And to have our main downtown area looking like a dump is, to me, disgraceful. And I think my remarks apply really to not only Hope Street, where we're all at the post office and library and everything, but they apply to Wood Street, and they apply to 10th Street. The way to do this is for the Public Works to have a couple of people free to do special projects. And this actually should be something that's done every day. I used to have it arranged that when I, as town administrator, went to the Public Works, I'd say on a Monday morning, you've got to do so-and-so, and if you don't do it, tell me Thursday why not. And that's the attitude you got to have. And I think in the wintertime, when the snow is on the ground, we ought to follow my suggestions about that too. I don't think it's right down there on Hope Street to have people slogging through thick snow or wet melting snow. We should clear it. Last winter, I personally, as a citizen, shoveled quite a lot of this snow off the sidewalk from the post office beyond the library, and I don't think a citizen should have to do that. So I'm just saying to you, whoever's in charge of this, I'm sick and tired of hearing a bunch of excuses. We're too busy. We can't do it. We as a council bought you wonderful sweeping equipment. I think you should use it, and you should keep our town as prideful as it ought to be to justify our claim that we're the best town in Rhode Island. I'm very sorry to speak to you so strongly, but I'm going to continue to do that until we see some results and we can become proud once again of our downtown area.
What's your pleasure for your motion? Is there a response back?
First of all, I'd like to ask the question. You mentioned that you had staff that was free. Is the mic not on?
Say that again, please.
He's going to turn it on.
Halsey, you mentioned that when you were the town administrator, you had staff that was dedicated to do this type of work. What was
what I did to organize DPW when I was a town administrator, I recognized that this sort of thing had to be done. So I insisted that the DPW director have a staffing arrangement where there were a couple of people available to do special things. They were the two people that put the street lights up. But it was arranged that I could on a Monday morning say, we're going to do so-and-so this week, and I don't want any excuses, I want it done. And my DPW director wasn't all that happy with it for a while, but we finally got along just fine, and the town looked neat. And I'm asking that that be done again in 2016.
I appreciate that, Halsey, I do. But my question is, at the time, what was the size of the Public Works Department versus what it is today?
About the same.
I would...
Well, look, let me just say this to you, sir. I respect you, and I know you've had a distinguished career in the military and all, but I don't want a bunch of excuses. I want to see our town looking bright, fine, and prideful without a lot of mess to be embarrassed about. I don't care how you do it, but do it. Now, for instance, you go down to Roger Williams University, which is taken care of by DuPont Landscaping. I was there on Tuesday to vote. It's immaculate. Absolutely clean. Ask them how they do it, and we should do the same thing. We don't even have as big an area as the grounds of Roger Williams University. I don't, with all respect to you and to the town administrator, I don't want any excuses. I want this done.
I appreciate that, Halsey, but maybe if you took a walk down tonight and take a look at Hope Street, it's signed for no parking for tomorrow night so that we can do it. We would have done it prior to the November 20th lighting, but because of the storm, we couldn't get to it.
Well, I don't want any excuses. Look, the way to do it
Wait. No, Halsey. Let's all. You absolutely can. You can finish your statement, but we're going to take it down about a little bit because we treat each other with
I'll lower
respect.
the level. And, I would say with all justification for me, I've made these as suggestions many times, and now I'm just so frustrated and I'm doing it more aggressively than is pleasant, but I'm just trying to get my point across. The way to do it, in my estimation, is that way. You know, when I come back from a late event in Providence or something and drive in this town here at 1:30 in the morning, even when you don't have the signs, there are very few cars in the main part of town. So I think that's the way to do it, to maybe have one man or two men that have short hours during the day, and they come in and do it in the evening when it can be done. But I don't want to tell you how to do it. I just say to you, I hope you'll find a way to make us proud.
Well, and that's exactly what's going to happen to try to do it for this weekend. It will be done in the evening hours, and that's why we're posting it, so that we can do it in a short amount of time to reduce the cost to do it during that time frame.
But don't just do
let him finish.
Equipment, and I've also purchased equipment to address this issue.
But please don't just do it once, do it continually. And there's another small point down there. When we redid the streetscape quite successfully a couple of years ago with the state of Rhode Island, they did a good thing. They opened up the trees area. Remember, trees used to be constrained by those bricks, and now is a big open space. But those big open spaces are very untidy. And I think rather than using chips that blow all over the place, you should use something like a hemlock coverage or something. Maybe ask Chris Fletcher what he thinks is a good thing to use. So I'm just saying to you, let's, as the chairman's suggesting, put our heads together, work together, and succeed with all this. We'll help you.
Well, we certainly have we certainly have put our heads together to accomplish that. And as the director pointed out, it's not the lack of that we're not listening. We are listening, and we will continue to address that.
Well, you think you can make a resolve to have it all look very nice all through the year 2016?
We'll make every effort within the constraints of the budget.
Having to talk to you all?
Within the constraints of the budget, we'll make it happen.
Well, if the budget becomes a problem, or there's other reasons why you can't do it, I think it would be good to speak to the council. I don't know whether the rest of the councilors are as ardent as I am about this, but I do know that we would try to work with you to make our town proud.
I'll be more than willing
Believe me, I walk every morning, 5 days a week, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'll be more than willing to sit with Councilor Herreshoff and yourself and the director. Since we're going to talk about the Department of Public Works, that's all we seem to talk about for the past 2 years. And I think the morale and, to commend these guys because of the staffing, and when the Director of Public Works, whether it be past or present, come before this council and say the need of their budgetary items and their staffing, it goes hand in hand. And instead of just having a dialogue where we're pointing fingers, we have to come together and work together. And if it depends on sitting down in an office and going over the projects and communicating that way like we do with the roads and whatnot, let's take that avenue instead. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope we'll get some good results.
So we would need to receive and file on this one. Halsey, you tell me.
I think we should receive and file because this isn't something we want to do between now and December 16th and drop it. We want to do it forever as far as I'm concerned. So why don't we just say that we'll find a way to make it happen.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, also from Councilman Herreshoff, regarding possible move of important institutions to Bristol.
Well, we do have this great town, and we're always anxious to make it better and bring in new ideas. And I'd like to suggest that the council listen to Dr. Patrick Connolly about a very promising new idea to bring to Bristol an important Rhode Island institution.
As you recall, and first, thank you for being so patient. I know it's been a little bit of a while. As you recall, this was brought in front of the council in our October 20, gosh, I forgot, it was a couple of meetings ago, by Councilor Stewart and Councilor Herreshoff, and spoken with you. And Halsey actually asked me about putting this on the agenda, and I said, absolutely, you can give us a breakdown of what you're proposing, and it's important to know that this council really can't take any action on this because there's nothing to take action on, but I thought it was a great public service announcement. So, Doctor.
Thank you very much. As they say, good things come to those who wait, and I'm more than happy to wait. It was a very interesting dialogue on a number of issues tonight.
Oh, yes, sir.
Halsey has mentioned in placing this that He believes that Bristol is one of the most patriotic and civic, public-spirited towns in America. I tend to agree with that assessment. I came here in 1986, and since that time I've tried to bring things to Bristol commensurate with its heritage, its history, and its patriotism. When I moved here in 1986, that very year, I was named by the Speaker of the House, Matt Smith, as the chairman of the Rhode Island Bicentennial Foundation to celebrate the bicentennial of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Mary Perella was a member of that foundation. During that period, I also was the chairman of the U.S. Constitution Council. And what I did in that capacity was to take the State House in Bristol, the old State House courthouse, which was largely vacant at that time except for the sheriff, and use that as the headquarters, both for the foundation and eventually, in 1988, for the U.S. Constitution Council. And working with Halsey back then as administrator, we brought the Magna Carta to Bristol. Now, the Magna Carta, the origin of individual liberties, original Lincoln exemplar of the Magna Carta, came to 51 communities in America under the auspices of the U.S. Constitution Council. Bristol was by far the smallest community. The criteria for showing the Magna Carta was communities of 100,000 or more. Bristol participated in that national observance. In 1991, we celebrated the bicentennial of the Bill of Rights. We brought the HMS Rose and docked it in Bristol with a copy of the Bill of Rights. After all of these bicentennial events were over, including the bicentennial of Rhode Island statehood, which was in part centered here in Bristol and also in Newport, which the foundation also arranged and conducted, I stayed on in that State House because I felt that it had some promise for Bristol as a community center. And in 1994, I drafted legislation sponsored by Bristol representatives, Charlie Millard, Larry Ferguson. And that legislation provided for turning that State House over to a foundation which I had created. And when that legislation passed, we drafted a deed. Lincoln Ullman signed it, and the Bristol State House Foundation got that State House. We have 6 surviving State Houses. The only one that is not in public hands is the one that is here in Bristol, and it continues to serve, I think, an important public purpose. I created a 501c3 so that George Sisson could use his magic with the Rhode Island Foundation. And in the period from 1997 to 2006, the foundation gave $815,000 to renovate that building and to expand it. So we talked about 501c3s before. Now I'm going to talk about 3 others, also ones that I created. One is the Rhode Island Publication Society, which has published over 100 books on Rhode Island, several of them dealing with Bristol. The Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame, which is the main point of my remarks, and also the Heritage Harbor Foundation. I chair all of those. They're all 501c3s, and those 3 want to come to Bristol, which is why I'm here this evening to inform the council. I've talked to Halsey Harrisoff. I've talked to Councilman Stewart about this. And Lou Cirillo is quite familiar with the Heritage Hall of Fame because he participated only last Sunday in the induction of Mark Anthony DeWolf Howe, one of the many Bristolians that I've nominated and which my board has approved for induction into the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame. The problem is the Hall of Fame was at the Civic Center initially, back in the 1970s and early 80s, and then it moved to the Aldridge House of the Rhode Island Historical Society. It was supposed to be in the Heritage Harbor Museum, the South Street Station in Providence, on the Providence waterfront. Unfortunately, the Great Recession and a change by the state of the state historic tax credit legislation led to the failure of Streever Brothers, the company that was supposed to do that over into a Rhode Island museum, where the Hall of Fame would be very prominently present. And so the Hall of Fame has no home. Every morning, my wife, weather permitting, my wife Gail and I walk out in Cold State Park. And Gail's been telling me for the last 3 or 4 years, look at that magnificent building there. A building designed, the Colt Dairy Barn, designed by Wallace Howe, relative of the person that Lou inducted on Sunday. Magnificent building. That's where you should put the Hall of Fame. Look at all the space there. It's unused. It's vacant. That's not, we got to do this in Providence. Well, we tried in Providence. We looked around because the educational institutions were there, other major museums. But the more I thought of it, and the more Gail persuaded, I thought that here's the place. Why not in Bristol, the most historic, the most heritage-oriented town of Rhode Island, and one of the most anywhere, I think. And so I made a proposal that, to the DEM, who controls the building, because it's part of Colt State Park, that we use, not take it over, not ownership like the Bristol State House, but that we enter into a long-term lease with the state of Rhode Island and place the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame in that 15,000 square foot building. There's exhibit space in the building, so at the Heritage Harbor Museum, some of the exhibits it planned was small enough to be shown and displayed there. And the building renovated could become a community center, a place of meeting for local historical and heritage-oriented groups. And so that basically is the plan that we put forward, and we'd have the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame with the Hall of Fame itself, the Heritage Harbor Foundation with some of the exhibits that could still be utilized that were planned for the South Street Station, and also the Rhode Island Publication Society holding offices there and having a display of the Hall of Fame and opening up those that premises to public use and enjoyment. In all of this, without any expenditure of tax money. What I offered to do was to raise funds. We can raise between $5 and $7 million quite easily. One of the members of the Hall of Fame, good friend of mine, Vartan Gregorian, former president of Brown, has a $3.3 billion corporation. You might have heard of it. It's the Carnegie Foundation. He wrote me. He supports it. We inducted Nora Drexel Stoner of Newport, the head of the $1 billion Drexel Foundation based in England. The treasurer of that foundation wants to make a donation. We have the Champlin Foundation. George Champlin is a member of the Hall of Fame. And in fact, so is Samuel Colt, who built the barn, and John Hubbard Chafee, who transferred, or got the transfer of the land from the Colt family to the state of Rhode Island. So the Hall of Fame is all over this building, and it's coming to Bristol, we hope. Got an initial rejection, but I believe that can be overcome. I've talked to Senator Jack Reed yesterday and his staff, and they're working on some of the details with regard to some of the federal funding for outdoor recreation that it was suggested might interfere with an indoor use. So they're working on that, and we have I think a very, very strong level of support. Howard Sutton, the president, publisher, and former CEO of the Journal, and Alan Hassenfeld of Bristol, and Howard, of course, lived out on Papa Squash for a while, Admiral Middendorf. They're going to be the co-chairs of a fundraising foundation. So we've got a tremendous group, and the board of directors of the Hall of Fame itself, extraordinarily impressive. A couple of generals and lawyers and professors and even an Indian chief. So what we would like to do is just to inform you of this, and if you mentioned that there's no action you can take, well, of course, it's a state matter. I know that quite well, but perhaps some type of a resolution or expression of support, such as contemplated by Councilman Stewart and Councilman Harrisoff, might be, join the bandwagon, so to speak, so that the powers that be will recognize not only the importance of the project and of a permanent site for the Hall of Fame, but that come to Bristol, where I think it would fit just fine.
That was thank you. Thank you for sharing that information. It's nice to hear it directly from you and for myself. And obviously, this was brought in front of all of us a couple of meetings ago, as I mentioned. And for me, I mean, from what I know about it, which is what you shared and what my colleagues have shared, sounds like it would be appropriate for Bristol. So on that part of it, you certainly have my buy-in on it, but on for the council taking action on it, we can't, nor should we, because we don't have enough information to take action or a specific project. But in the big picture, for myself, that sounds like a very positive thing for Bristol, I got to tell you. So
I think that we could send a letter of support, though, that at least conceptually, that we think this would be a great addition to Bristol and to, add to the museums and to house this, and if that's the appropriate location at Cole Park, then we could, I think you're right, that if more people are on the bandwagon, the better, because it's going to probably take some legislative clout to get DEM to agree. So I don't really see, even without like a detailed plan, just, to be able to say, even conceptually, we love the idea and that we want to move forward with it and we are in support. And, would be, we're not committing ourselves to anything. We're not saying we're going to partner per se at this point. So I think we could do that.
Well, I agree with Mary, and I know that Eddie and I've looked into this a lot. And what I'd like to suggest is that we have a resolution that avoids the nitty-gritty of the process of it being approved by all involved, but that we just say that we as a council, recognizing the values of Bristol and many, many charitable organizations, would feel honored if this statewide organization could come to our town of Bristol, and that we're going to be watchful of the possibilities of that happening in some way.
I would caution my colleagues, if I can remind you of a hotel conversation that was in front of us, and we were asked to make comments or support or not support, and we won't go any farther than that. But I don't think it's appropriate for us, and please don't take that as I don't support it, because as you heard, I do. But I don't think as this body sits right now, we have enough information to make to support it. We don't know what objections there might be, if there's any. There may not be any. Great news. But I don't think we have enough information. So
Well, I presented a packet there that details. I mean, we don't have the architectural drawings.
Again, I don't want to spin this negative, because I think it's a positive thing. So
My grandmother always said, before you make the rabbit stew, you first catch the rabbit. So we don't have architectural drawings or things of that type, but we have, I think, a pretty good conceptual statement about as strong as and detailed as one could make it. And but if the council feels that a resolution is not appropriate, then so be it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion. I'd like to preface it by saying that we have in this town Linden Place, Blythewell, Mount Hope Farm, Cogswell Farm, Harris Marine Museum, the State House, and we've always been hopeful that these institutions and a few others would prosper, and most of them have, even though some of them gotten in a rut and had to work out of it. And all I would like to do is to move that we would feel very honored if another important state institution, the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame and its associated organization, would find a way to come to this town, and that we're going to be standing by to see what happens.
And we say statewide, but this is a private 501c3 foundation, which is why we're capable of raising the multi-million dollars to restore that bond and to convert it to public use.
Well, perhaps my motion should be amended to say a prestigious organization recognized by all of the state of Rhode Island.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, I'll second it.
Is that for discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, obviously I'm in support of Dr. Conley. I think just to be cordial in our letter that we're presented with this opportunity, and we as a town of Bristol recognize this opportunity, and we welcome ongoing conversations with parties involved along that line, since there is not a solidified plan right now, and players have to come into the room of communication of such as stated that we need, and I think we have to do it in a manner that, as the chairman says, and we're all in support of it, but just craft it at that step to go forward. I would be in support of that.
Dr. Conley, I just want to let you know I am also in support, and I had a question in regards to the DEM letter in regards to, they were saying a mingling of funds. When do you think that will all be straightened out and you would have a clear knowing whether you're green lighted or...
I want to be really careful with this. I would prefer that we don't go down this road.
Okay.
And the reason why is that the party that wrote this letter doesn't have any opportunity to talk about it.
Okay.
In positive or negative. I have no idea. So
Right.
I prefer not to go down that,
Sure.
please. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Well,
that's
I
why-
am in support of the letter.
That's
and I
why,
am in
Mr.
support of
Chairman,
your initiative. Thank you.
I think the letter should be cordial to reach out again in the proper manner where we all can get involved and like you said, Dr. Conley, never give up and try again. So.
That we appreciate all the, I mean, we work successfully with DEM and that we appreciate that. Could I, okay, never mind. I'll wait till the vote, then I have another comment.
So we have a motion and a second. My discussion is I'm not going to vote for this, not because I'm not in support of the project, just I'm not ready to make a decision on whether or not, well, I don't think it's appropriate at this point in time for us to have a resolution. But please don't take that as I'm not in support of the project. So I want to be clear on that. So
Well, still for discussion, though, is taking a vote, I think it has to be crafted first before it's voted upon this council of the wording. I'm not going to vote on something without seeing the preface of the wording of how we're all discussing our points.
So why don't we do this so we don't keep going down a rabbit hole? I think it would be appropriate that Halsey, if you're comfortable with this, if you wanted to amend your motion that we continue this to the 16th. And
No, I don't want to do that, because I'll tell you this.
Let me finish, please, sir. Let me finish, please, sir.
I do not wish to do that.
Okay, and I hear you, but let me just finish the statement, and you can still not want to do it, and it's okay. Is that I was hoping that our fine clerk could present something to us that we could then vote on, and your support doesn't sound like it would change regardless. So.
Well, I think I understand your feelings on this, but all I'm doing is moving a positive sentiment that we would like to, in some way, have these organizations come to our town, and then we'll be honored to have them. And that isn't getting it all into the nitty-gritty of these letters and all. It's just that we like it, and if somehow it was here, we would be honored to have it. That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
So to that point, who's drafting this support letter? Who? That's where I need clarity on. Who's drafting it, Halsey?
Well, that clerk usually drafts our stuff.
Okay, so nothing against Lou, but if he drafts it, I mean, as a council, if we're voting on something, shouldn't we read it and see what is being sent off on our behalf? I know I do. Maybe others just let other people write things and speak.
So we've done many times that we have asked the clerk to write something and send it off on our behalf. This is certainly not the first time.
I always see resolutions before this council.
No, not resolutions, but we've also asked them to draft letters.
So-
if it's a resolution, it's different than a letter.
So clarity. I've heard a motion and a second to draft a letter right now and not continue it. That's the motion on the floor. So the motion on the floor is to write a letter in support of the idea of it, or I'm not going to change all these words, but that's the motion, to draft it, voting on it tonight. So all in favor?
Aye.
I mean, voting on it tonight? Yes, I'm fine. I'm fine with doing that. Yes.
And then all against. Okay. Is there another motion on the floor in regards to this?
I would make a motion to continue this to the 16th so we can view the letter. I am in support, Dr. Conley. There's no reason if it goes to the 16th we can't just view the letter, approve it, make sure my other colleagues are comfortable with it, and mail it out.
Oh, yeah, I have no
and if
problem
you're okay with that.
I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Okay.
I can understand Councilman Stewart's concern with regard to the tenor. I've written for 3 governors, a mayor, and a congressman. They don't usually read what I write, but the council, I can see in this instance, you want to be prudent. You don't want to overcommit. This could be the DEM has, as I've shown you, has expressed at this point a disinclination to accept our request, and so a letter to be read and approved by all, I think, is a prudent way to go.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to draft a letter that we would read on the 16th and then potentially vote to approve on. All in
Looking for a
favor?
letter or resolution? I mean,
Did I say resolution? I apologize. My words were poor. I apologize. It was a letter. Thank you for the clarity. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second for a letter to be drafted for the meeting of the 16th. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could I just
Okay,
ask
thank you
one
very
other-
much.
Could I just ask one other quick
Sure, Mary.
question? Or, I was thinking about this, if DEM does not come around, I think it would still be a great asset to Bristol. And I was thinking about the amount of money that would take that you would be raising for the building. And at the last council meeting, I think it was the last council meeting, we had a big discussion about another property in Bristol that we don't know what to do with. And I'm not sure it would be appropriate for this because it's proximity to the water. But the Azevedo property right downtown, it's not, I don't think it's anywhere near, even if you put some linkage together between the buildings. I'm not sure it would be enough square footage, but it just occurred to me as I was reading your materials, and I don't even know what I was reading, but something where it laid out the amount of money you were thinking of raising, and we had just had that discussion, and I wondered if that would be a possibility to pursue. At least to think about.
Where is the Azevedo building?
Right down on the waterfront. It would be on the waterfront.
Is it the big mill there, or?
No, it's just two houses, right? It's two houses right now.
No, I don't think the house would be, that would be too small.
Well, it may end up being a vacant lot at some point.
Right.
So I think we've made a motion in regards to this particular topic. So, Dr. Connolly, thank you very much for your information and the way you shared your information.
Thank you. And I would also mention, because I've run this by Walter Burke, who does a phenomenal job as your Director of Recreation, who's perhaps more familiar with Cole Park than anyone here, for certain, and probably more familiar than anyone that works for DEM. So you might, anybody that drafts this letter might consult him as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, from the Council Chairman regarding a notice of violation form.
Is this just information?
This is just information. This is in its final stages of being completed. This coincides with our current ordinances and laws. What this does simply is Ray Falco will show a violation or recognize a violation, and to take it to the next step to get that property owner to deal with that violation, it's a process right now, including court. This is a ticket book to hopefully the first shot. Hopefully we never, ever have to write out a violation with a dollar figure. Hopefully it's just a warning. But this is a way for us to enforce our current ordinances. And in fact,
I've already gotten one of these, so it's
you're
an
welcome.
effective
So-
mechanism.
That's like when you make a comment, you're speeding down Hope Street.
I'm responding to it favorably.
Well, spectacular. I love it. Thank you so much for making the point. So, on our next council meeting, we're going to have an agenda item. The way our current ordinance is written with fees is that it can be up to a $100 fine. Mike, could you just kind of relay a little bit more on that one?
Sure, absolutely. Just to follow up first, the notice of violation, this is used very effectively by other cities and towns where the code enforcement officer is able to physically give someone something or leave it on the doorstep so that the individual truly understands, hey, this is a violation, it's your first warning. He'll keep track of his warnings, and at some point it could lead to a fine. So it'll be very, very efficient in terms of what we're doing. In our municipal court, we have the ability to fine up to $500, but in our general code of ordinances it says $100. So you're going to have an ordinance before you to increase the amount to $500, so we're consistent throughout the town.
So, a point of clarity on that, that's not suggesting that a violation would be $500.
No, up to.
It could be up to, depending on its egregious nature.
Yeah, exactly. When you get to multiple violations, you need to really call it to someone's attention by an increased fine.
Perhaps I'll have to recuse myself, but I would vote for it anyway if I could.
So, this is something that actually Ed Tanner is the person I reached out to on this one. This came from talking to Ray and hearing his frustration about not being able to deal with certain situations. They didn't have teeth in it. And Ed used to work in, am I right with North Attleboro, Ed? Attleboro. So he worked in Attleboro, and they had this, and this is kind of what we modeled it by, and it's a great way to make sure that we can deal with situations when they arise. So this is just an FYI for everybody. So I need a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is from the State Planning Council regarding the statewide planning program amendment to the rules and standards of the State Planning Council. There will be a public hearing on these on December 7th.
Motion to receive and file.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a bid. This is bid number 834 for the Recreation Department for an 80-kilowatt propane gas generator. You have one bid submitted from Wayne Electric of Bristol in the amount of $99,770.
I would move that we convey this to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And that you have items K1 and K2. These are the periodic reports provided by Alan Klepper on behalf of the Bristol County Water Authority.
If it's okay, Mr. Clerk, combine K1 and K2 and make a motion to receive and file both.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Next is an executive session, which again will likely link with the one above. Now we are at the point of the,
AA1.
We have AA1 and AA2 withheld from the consent agenda at the request of Councilman Harrisoff.
Well, I would like to ask Diane Williamson and the harbor master about the item in here, one of these minutes, that suggests that there's now an opinion that the cost of completing this, particularly regarding the exterior, is much more than was estimated when we made the agreement here to use the entire $800,000. Remember, we were at that time hopeful that by adding some monies up to our original limit of $800,000 that we would successfully complete everything. And now I see in here a suggestion that whoever made the estimate wants more money than that money. And it's alarming. Well, in other words, what is it going to... Is the $800,000 that we authorized together with the $800,000 from the grant, $1.6 million, sufficient to complete that job, close it down, and say that's done?
Yes, we're taking it as far as we can take it for the priority areas of the wall that will need to be done.
Well, I don't quite understand what you mean by that, because what was, I think, paramount in the discussion we had when we authorized the rest of the $800,000 from the town was that that would be enough to take care of everything that was then in mind to be done. So what I'd really like to do is, for the sake of the council and for the town citizens, the course of things, I'd like us to clarify just where it stands in that regard.
I think I'm going to let Julie speak to that. She's well-versed in the budget.
We can dive deeper into this at another date, and I can bring out the numbers. But basically, we were provided with an estimate that had kind of a menu of portions of the building and the associated costs with those things. So there was everything from, minor structural work that needed to be done on one side of the building to major work on the whole tower. We were given priorities, and the recommendation was that, given the budget and what we had on hand, we would do certain portions of the building and then wait on the remainder. I'm not sure we thought that we could do every single thing we wanted to do, but we thought we could do the priority
To me, that's precisely the way we should go. And what I would like to ask of you is, if this council were to continue the matter for 2 weeks till December 16th, could you kind of put the flesh on the bones of this and bring it to us?
Yeah,
and,
we can provide you with the information.
Anytime you're fixing up an old building or even building a new one, there's things you want that you can't have, and maybe what we could do is put our heads together and say, well, yeah, we're going to do this, and not going to do this one, and try to keep it within the current budget.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we did, and we took their recommendations and we looked at the assessment that they had done. We took the priority areas that we could accomplish within our budget, structured it in a way that we have some room to make some decisions depending on where we end up after all the interior is done, making sure that any change orders that fall out, that we'll be well aware of the budget, and then we'll be able to know exactly how much work we can get done. So I think we have a pretty good plan in place for doing that, and I'd be happy to share with you more information.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we continue the matter to December 16th with a request for more specifics on this issue so that the council could either endorse or change the proposed solution.
May I make a suggestion which will, I think, do what you would like it to do? I would suggest rather that you make a motion to create an agenda item, for this purpose, rather than continuing minutes, because it looks a little convoluted in the...
That's a fair point.
Well, I agree to your restating it in that fashion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I just wanted to say quickly on the consent agenda, HH11, you guys, has a report from Julie on November 24th on the harbor and Maritime Center. It's just stating what's going on with it. It looked like it was on budget. It's give you a nice rundown on it, just to bring you up to speed on the latest.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, back to the individual council member agenda items, beginning with the chairman.
We've had 10:30 meetings before, but this one was particularly a 10:30 meeting. It was quite long. There was a lot of good discussion. The beginning was, I'm glad that we took the time. I know it's sometimes challenging, but I thank everyone who spoke. I thank my colleagues. I thank everyone that's still here and awake, and some that aren't. Thanksgiving just passed. Reminds all of us how really lucky we are to have what we have around us. Saturday is the lighting. I say that again, Saturday is the lighting. It's typically on Sunday. It's been that way for 28 years, if my memory is correct. 27 years, coming up. Well, it was going to be 28, right?
Yes.
So it'll be on Saturday night for a lot of reasons, and I think they're all good, which is allowing our retail establishments to have an opportunity to see more people, to allow the people of Bristol, hopefully, maybe to spend some more time downtown. You don't have to spend a dime. To just walk around and not have to get home for Sunday night for work the next day. So I personally think it's a great idea, and I'm looking forward to it as I always do. The Christmas Festival Committee does a lot of work on this. DPW does a lot of work on this. I bumped into a couple of guys setting up the stage out in front of Burnside, so we thank them. The police department and the fire department do a lot of work on this, and we say thank you. So this is just one reason why Bristol's a beautiful place. Troop 2, doing the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of our meetings. Another reason why we're very lucky to live where we live, and we have a beautiful town here, and I think it's worth it to say that again and again. So thank you.
Mr. Sweeney.
If you haven't tuned in a while and you haven't heard, there's going to be a new ordinance called No Bin, No Barrel. And you've probably heard about it, but I just wanted to let everybody know that what it simply means is that if you don't put out your recycling bin with your trash every week, the trash will not be picked up. And you're probably saying, well, why are you guys doing this? And again, we must do a better job at recycling or face much higher expenses to send our trash to the Johnston landfill. And very simply, it costs to send trash to the Johnston landfill. Sending recyclables is free. So if you want to learn more about what is recyclable and what isn't recyclable, feel free to contact the town administrator, DPW, any of my colleagues, and we'll be happy to bring you up to speed on what's going into effect on January 1st. On a lighter note, just wanted to let you know that the library reached out to me and they said they created a Christmas tree and it's decorated completely with recyclable ornaments. So if you have a chance, go ahead and check it out. I know it's kind of goofy, but it's kind of cool in the same way, I think. And then finally, if you're looking forward to getting to the Christmas spirit, Mount Hope Farm's having a mingle and jingle this Friday, starting at 6 o'clock. And just simply go online to www.mounthopefarm to grab your tickets.org. And again, it's it will be this Friday from, it says, I think 6 to 10. And I hope to see you guys all down at the Grand Illumination. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Ms. Perella.
Thank you. Well, the Grand Illumination is something that we're all looking forward to. And Tony, speaking of Christmas trees, or at least Christmas-looking trees, I just wanted to bring to your attention, I think I mentioned it to you before, the anniversary trees, or whatever we call them, the founders trees up on the common, that we had all looked at a couple of years ago and decided that we really couldn't do anything about them. I think they've gotten worse, at least the northwest corner, the one behind Wally Street and Wally School. I mean, that's pretty much, one whole side is pretty much, and the side that faces the street, too, so there's no hiding it. It's pretty much all dead. Yeah, it's all dead. Yeah, it's dead. I mean, so I think we need to really think about...
It's an ever-brown tree.
It's a half and half. It's like, I think we really, maybe for the budget, or we need to think about what to do about it. I know we had looked at it, I think, when these guys all came on the council a couple of years ago, and decided that we would just live with it, and it wasn't really, that we couldn't do anything at that point. But if they're getting worse, and we talk about the pride in our community, I mean, that is this sort of center of town. We've got these dead trees just sitting there. So.
I can ask the tree warden as well as an arborist, independent arborist, to take a look at it and provide a recommendation.
Because I think one of the things, too, if you wanted to maintain the integrity of the fact that they were recognizing one of the anniversaries of the founding of the town, I can't remember if I went up there, if I just thought about it when I was walking by one of the, we keep putting replanted. I think they originally planted at such and such a date, then there were other things. We could just say, given in remembrance of whatever the date was, and replanted on such and such a date. I mean, if that was one of the concerns. But if you could take a look at that and maybe get back to us at one of the future meetings, and then because I do think it would be a budget item if we decide to do something about it. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart.
Last Sunday, we gathered with the Christmas Festival Committee, and I'd like to congratulate this year's recipient of the Spirit of Christmas, Mr. Stan Dimmick, who has dedicated a lot of volunteerism to this community and continues to do so. So we're very happy to have him represent this year's 27th Annual Grand Illumination. At that festivity, one of the Christmas committee members, Dr. Richard Williams, recited 3 poems for us, and I know Tony will agree with me that one was about Thanksgiving, which we had last week. One was about our town of Bristol, which I found very exciting, and one was about Christmas. I thought about postponing this to the 16th, but it seems we continued a lot of items, and I don't know if we're going to be here at another later time at that meeting. But in the spirit of the holidays, since we had Thanksgiving and Christmas in Bristol, in which we celebrate so much, like the Grand Illumination and all of our hard efforts of trying to, like the chairman said and my colleagues, strive to make our community a better place. I'm just going to read the Thanksgiving poem that Dr. Williams wrote called Thankfulness, and it'll just take me a couple minutes. Thankfulness is often shown on only holidays. We just don't stop to express our thanks on many other days. It doesn't mean we don't appreciate the kindness others share, but we seldom show our gratefulness so others know we care. When we slow down and think about what matters for a while, it's a helping hand, a few kind words, or just a friendly smile. It's the little things all through the day that help us all along. They're just the things that we need most so we feel we all belong. We should pause a moment then and simply let others know they're truly appreciated much and remember to tell them so. There are many things we're grateful for that others often do, so send a note, call a friend, or simply say thank you. Holidays are not only the times to show our thankfulness. What others say or do for us matters more, not less. We ought to count our blessings then, each and every day, and tell the ones we care about in thankful words we say. But holidays give us a chance for thankfulness to show. It's nice to tell those that we love we thank them that we have them so. When we just stop and think, and all of we really truly have, we know we're blessed with family, friends, and those who truly care, and especially here in the town of Bristol. And with that, thank you, Mike Davis. Thank you, Archie Martins, everyone who came out tonight, and everyone tuning in at home. Thank you.
You can read the Christmas one next time.
And Mr. Harrisoff.
Right. Well, I've been carrying around in my wallet for the last 2 months this little list of 8 requests, and I've already, at this meeting, discussed the street lights on Monkey Ranch Lane, which I hope the town administrator and I will study a little further. Secondly, Ms. Texera, we have also discussed the possibility of moving the illumination of one of the lights on Burnside Street to more favorably illuminate the whole street, and I recommend that because they can be done with very little expense, no additional expense in the future. In other words, there are 2 lights at the corner, and we could put out the second one of those and illuminate on the pole in between, and thereby light the whole street.
The pole in between, if you look at it, it's not in the best of shape, and I'm not so sure that it's going to be able to handle a fixture, to attach a fixture to it. But that's something that I can have the folks from National Grid take a look at it as well. But Ed Tanner and Ray Falco actually took a walk there just to confirm what I had seen, and the pole, I'm not so sure that's going to handle.
Which pole are you referring to?
You're talking not the one at the very corner or immediate across from the parking lot, but going up towards High Street.
Well, I'm promoting illuminating the one that is just partway up the street. So maybe if, with your indulgence, we can have another look at that as well tomorrow.
You've got a busy day tomorrow.
Busy? Well, it's going to be in the early evening. We have to allow the sun to set.
It's during sunset.
Thank you. So with your indulgence, perhaps we can do that. The third one is to cut the brush in Independence Park for review of the water, and it's been agreed with Walter that that'll be done, and I'm going to just have to go to him to see how we get it done. I think that'll be fine. And I continue to hope very much that the error of a few years ago of having our street signs reading in one direction and not the other can be rectified so that visitors can see the name of the cross streets whether they're heading north or south.
That is.
I think that's part of your sign arrangement?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Are there going to be new signs or just a different type?
Yes, new, different type.
Will you come in about this in December 16th? Maybe you could show us something on that too?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Please.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. And then I have, over the last couple of years, or this year anyway, written a snow removal game plan suggestion, which I think has fallen on deaf ears, and I'm going to continue that. The main point I make in that snow removal is that I think we've done a very good job during the onset of the storm, but where I think we've fallen down is that it's so typical after a snowfall, say in an afternoon or an evening, to have either the next day or the second day after it a warming period with a bright sun. And that's when we should be out sweeping away the slush and getting rid of it. And that's particularly true of sidewalks, because if you take, for example, the sidewalk on the west side of Hope Street by the post office and library, until about 12 noon, there's strong sunlight on that, and all we need is somebody to come along with a machine or a shovel at 11 a.m. and push all that slush to the side quickly and easily instead of having to lift a lot of snow to the thing. So I'm going to resubmit to the administration my game plan and hope that you might do me the favor of having some look at it, you and the DPW. And then the sixth one, I'm very pleased to see that the temporary paving on Fairview Avenue has been done. But I would like to say that I am really not very sure that the next step of that, to do this new sewer drainage project to assist the wastewater treatment plant in not having an overflow. I'm worried that won't get done in 2016. What do you think is the prospect of that getting done?
It will get done in 2016.
But Tony, one of the things for that, if you don't mind me interjecting, is this is the road. And, you know, one of the neighbors brought it up to me, I believe to other people on the council, that project entails a road going through property. I don't know if it's like a paper street.
It's not a
I don't know
road.
what it is.
Okay, we need to clarify that. It's a second access to the sewer plant in case of an emergency, and that's strictly used for emergency purpose.
Well, could you provide maybe more details in the next meeting?
Yes.
On that, because it's still going to look like a road, and you're still going through people's property, and what the deal is on it, because...
Well, there's a town easement there.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But I think what we should do...
We didn't know about it, and I think we got kind of caught
Mary's...
up.
I would rather have Beta come to you and show exactly the plans that's being proposed.
If not the 16th, the first meeting in January.
Right. No, I would say into January.
Actually, that would be perfect. I think we filled up our 16th,
Yeah.
and it may be the 17th by the time we get out. So.
I know, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So much for like a holiday event, right?
Well, I think it's good to Mary that you brought that up, but when you get Beta to come to us at one of our subsequent meetings, maybe the beginning of January would be good, would you also have Mike or Kevin run down the steps towards the completion next year of the line in Fairview? Because usually when they come, they have to say that there's some impediment that has to be overcome, and I'd like us to understand what, if any, impediments there are. Okay? And then I'm still trying to get some better reflectors on that area of State Street where the Loafers Corner is, and I think what I'm going to do on that is take it under my own advisement and with proper permission from the administration, DPW, I'm going to suggest some reflectors to be affixed to the curbing there.
They were there, but the problem with that is that they get scraped off when there's snow removal.
And also
in addition to that, when there's snow, they get covered, so they defeat the purpose of having... you can't install them any higher than the curb itself.
Yeah, I have a new idea. My idea is that I buy a lot of reflective tape like you use on joggers or bicycles and whatnot, and we just glue them on there, and if they go off in a snowstorm, we'll glue them on again. I'm going to suggest that to you, and I'm going to bring you the material.
I'll be looking forward to seeing it.
I'll even bring you the glue.
Well, the thing is, you got to understand, it's not that they were there, there were reflectors there, but it hasn't been an issue. I mean, the chief provided a report that we haven't had any incidents there, so I'm not sure why you're being so persistent about installing reflectors there when we haven't had any incidents to report.
My persistence is to take action before the accident instead of after it, and I would say to you that I understand exactly what you're saying, but this is a case where there's a chance to do something that's positive without any negative element to it. Not going to cost you anything.
Well, it does, because you got to purchase the reflectors, and they were not cheap, the ones that we put there.
I'm going to purchase them and give them to you.
Okay.
And I'll even glue them on if you don't want any people to do that either.
That's what
we'll have to do that at nighttime, too, so we know we're placing them.
There you go.
No, I'm going to do it in the daytime so that they are useful at nighttime.
I feel like we should move forward. I really do.
I'll show you to that anyway. And then
We can discuss it tomorrow on stage.
the eighth one of mine is the matter of the street sweeper, which I've already covered. And then finally, taking a lead from Councilman Stewart, I'm going to read an even briefer account from George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior, for which perhaps I, more than any of you, should take note at this juncture.
I haven't heard it yet, and I still agree.
So, this is the first of three brief ones. Number one.
Oh, no, just one, please.
Every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those that are present. I think that's good advice, isn't it? Every instance. And next, this one I find rather appealing, number 56. Let your conversation be without malice or envy, for it is a sign of a tractable and commendable nature, and in all cases of passion, admit reason to govern. Pretty good advice. And then finally, be not immodest in urging your friends to discover a secret.
I got the first one. I didn't get the second two. I don't mind telling you, so.
Well, the third one.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I'll contemplate on it for a while.
Let me give you an example of that one. It's the Nike, signal. Go for it. In other words, we don't put our head in the sand and do nothing, but we are not immodest in urging your friends to discover a secret. Go.
I am absolutely clear. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you very much.
We have town administrator agenda items.
Just very quickly, pointing out around the town hall, there's some decorations there, so I have to thank my wife Jackie, the interior decorator. You know, she's always reeling even the front of the building. She decided it would be good to place some items there as well to decorate the entrance. So thank you to Jackie. And also this weekend we'll have breakfast with Santa on Sunday. Even though the lighting is on Saturday, we have breakfast with Santa on Sunday morning at the high school. So please come up and join us. I'll be flipping pancakes. So, you know, it's pancakes, sausage, lots of artifacts for the children and so forth. So, you know, make sure that you join us. And with that being said, that's it. Thank you and good night.
Mike.
The motion is to adjourn to executive session, or I should say convene into executive session pursuant to 4246-5A2 litigation regarding the school district and 4245-5A5 regarding acquisition of real property, open space.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone.